Beyond the Waves is a Hail Hail Media production. It may contain sweary words, and adult situations may be discussed. If you're in the company of underage temps, turn up the show now and listen back later. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, email us at beyondthewaves67@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at BTW Celtic Show, or you can join our group on Facebook at Beyond the Waves. Hail Hail, and keep the faith.
From the cradle to the grave, life is tough. From the beginning to the end, the road is rough. But there's something you should always keep in mind. Take comfort in what comfort you can find. Oh, a life without passion I couldn't bear. Glasgow Celtic's my passion, I declare. And for this I make no apology, for it's always been Celtic. With some it's the horses, I've no doubt. With others it's the whiskey and the stout. With some it's every pretty girl they see. Well, it's always been Celtic with me. Others people now say that I'm insane, just because I've never missed a game. Be it wind or rain or hail or sleet or ice, I've yet to miss a game at Paradise. And all the money that I've spent going abroad, all the money that I never could afford, well, I spent it all in right good company, for it's always been Celtic with me. With some it's the horses, I've no doubt. With others it's the whiskey and the stout. With some it's every pretty girl they see. Well, it's always been Celtic with me. Right from the very start, you got into my heart to see. Was it for better or worse? Was it a blessing or a curse? It's all the same to me. And when I shuffle up this mortal coil, and my body it is planted in the soil, well, don't you play a dirge over me. Give me a Celtic song, a Celtic symphony, and I'll look down each Saturday from above, from heaven on the paradise I love. And with St. Patrick I will sing a verse or three, for there'll still be Glasgow Celtic with me. With some it's the horses, I've no doubt. With others it's the whiskey and the stout. With some it's every pretty girl they see. Well, it's always been Celtic with me. With some it's the horses, I've no doubt. With others it's the whiskey and the stout. With some it's every pretty girl they see. Well, it's always been Celtic with me. Some it's the horses, I no doubt. With others it's the whiskey and the stout. With some it's every pretty girl they see. Well, it's always been Celtic
Hello. Hello. Hi.
Welcome to the Beyond the Waves Celtic Football Show. My name is Graham Wilson, and if you like long walks on the beach and sushi, you have come to the right place. Today, we are going to review the final game of this SPL season. Celtic are the champions once again, And today, we absolutely turned over Dundee Hibernian at Tannadice. And seems as though Scottish Cup semifinal withstanding, we have Jackie Mack's number. But it was great to see the team come out and play with such enthusiasm today, a lot of focus, just really crisp, sharp play from back to front. I thought Neil Lennon's side was extremely attacking in nature. Obviously, it's going to be Paddy McCourt's last game. At least I would think. Common wisdom would be that he's not going to play much of a role, if any, in the Scottish Cup final next season. And we certainly wish Paddy well, but I thought he had a fine account for himself today, certainly in his last start playing for Celtic. Maybe some some regret in announcing his departure. Maybe not. I don't know. But I thought that, certainly some fond memories to leave on. But 4-0 today. Giorgio Samaras coming back, and it's great to see him playing with so much confidence. And obviously, we know that Sammy is a confidence-reliant player. When he's playing on all cylinders and really in the sort of role that suits him, he is exceptionally dangerous, especially on a big pitch like we're going to find at Hampden next week. So we're looking forward to that. We're looking forward to completing the double. Chris Commons, again, I thought today was superb with a goal of his own from a free kick, but really setting up Giorgio Samaras' first goal single-handedly with an absolutely inch-perfect delivery. And throughout the game, I thought he was superb. Today we had what I would consider a 4-2-3-1, but it was quite attacking in nature. I mean, really throughout large stretches of the game, the only sort of defensive-minded body in the middle was Joe Ledley. I mean, Scott Brown played the full 90 minutes, was absolutely everywhere, as he typically was. I think that it cannot be denied the sort of impact that he has on the side when he's fit. The sort of energy level. Kelvin Wilson came out, made some comments this week about the sort of impact that he has at training, talking about, you can turn up the training and having the worst day, and Bruni will not allow that to continue. He's always raising the spirits, the energy level, and so on. But I got to be honest, I'm having kittens every time he goes to the surface. Was involved in a lot of physicality today, taking and giving just as well a lot of the tackles. Kelvin Wilson, it's at times it's sublime to watch. I mean, he is exceptional in the tackle, really in his technique, and we saw a couple of instances of that today. Really, a flashback to last fall. It seems as though Neil Lennon has the players focused and up for this Scottish Cup tie next week. So hopefully we can take off this Hampden hoodoo, if you will, and have a fine display next week and lift the Scottish Cup and send us into the summer with smiles on all of our faces. But before we do anything, let's meet our panel for this week. And it's a man who really needs no introduction, really just a Celtic favorite throughout, a great friend of the show, the Green and White writer, Paul Larkin. Paul, how are you?
I'm very well, Graham. How are you?
I am fantastic. Never had a bad day in my life, but today is nice. Today is exceptional. I mean, obviously a sparkling performance from Celtic. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, brilliant. Everything I want for a Celtic team away from him today. You touched on, a bit more attacking players on the side. That's what I want to see. Very professional, very clinical. I thought right for the kickoff we were at it. I think the last couple of games the players have come straight back and kind of focused on the job in hand, and that's been really good. And I couldn't find fault with anybody. I thought, as you said, Commons was absolutely brilliant again. When he's on form, he's without doubt the best player in Scotland. Bruni again is some horrific treatment for the Dundee United players. Seem to have carte blanche to kick him at will. But that's the kind of things you get back. One player I'd like to touch on is Izagiri. I just think his commitment is just absolutely fantastic. A lot of players, given what's happened to him, the injury, and then kind of subsequent, average performances when he came back, just went into their shell. But he's really played his way through it, and that's something that I hear a lot in American sports where guys maybe on the at it for a couple of games and people talk about, should we drop them and that, and they say, no, you just let good players play their way through it. Mm-hmm. I think that's what Izagiri's done. And overall, I just think it was a perfect tournament to go into the cup final.
Yeah, one player that would be easy to overlook, but I thought was superb today was Fraser Forster. I mean, a couple of fantastic saves really on his head. Let's not take anything away from this Dundee United side. I mean, in spite of the scoreline, Jackie McNamara is always setting out for an attacking side. I mean, granted, 3 at the back today is a bit unique and interesting to see John Daly playing center half, but Jackie McNamara is not going to be afraid or sort of steer back from playing an attacking sort of a formation or from a tactical setup. He's going to come at you fast and furious over and over again. And some of these young players coming through that Dundee United system have a lot of potential. I mean, certainly very impressive. And it wasn't really so much from them not turning up, but it was some absolute sheer brilliance from Fraser Forster as well as our back four. So. Let me get your thoughts on, because you touched on Izagiri there, which I think is a good point. He went through, and I can't repeat this enough, and I certainly don't. He had a catastrophic injury. I mean, the type of injury that is possible to recover from. But it takes time, sometimes. And during that sort of interplay, Celtic supporters, I mean, we know this, we are very demanding. We're demanding in terms of effort and in terms of execution. And he did have a slow rebound coming back. But, as you say, his commitment and his attitude is absolutely, it's exactly what you want. When Neil Lennon offers to have him, go away and spend some time, resting and have a holiday or whatever, he refused. He wants to continue playing. He wants to continue developing. That's exactly the type of player that any team wants, that sort of commitment. And we're seeing that regeneration, that development back into, if not right at, certainly close to the player that we saw his first season in. And I think it's exceptional because, as we saw today, 4-2-3-1, it was a bit narrow at times, but, when you have an Emilio Izagiri and to a certain extent Adam Matthews when he's fit, that's really where you need your width, and him pairing up down that left-hand side with Joe Ledley certainly facilitates a lot of that attacking flair that can, open up space for the forward players, the strikers, and allow opportunities for a late running midfielder, and we saw that on several occasions. Mm-hmm. Another player that I want to touch on today was, we talked about Chris Commons, Paddy McCourt. Obviously, as I mentioned in the opening, his last game probably playing for Celtic. Let me get your thoughts. What's his legacy going to be? I mean, who knows where he's going to move on to, but he's sort of the Marmite of the Celtic support. You either love him or you don't take to him. Sometimes it can get a bit nasty. How is history going to treat Paddy McCourt? Is it going to be the type of thing where as time goes on, some of the cynicism mellows a bit, and people tend to appreciate him for what he was? I mean, he was never going to be standout, the player of the year type. He was always a super sub, but man, I mean, when he had his opportunities and where the brilliance shone through, it was just amazing to watch. What's his legacy going to be looking back, maybe 5-10 years from now?
Well, I think, the kind of way football fans are these days, it will be a two-pronged legacy. One will be that he never ever kicked a ball for us in any game ever, and the other will be that he was absolutely phenomenal in every game and nobody could believe he could play every week. I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I mean, he's obviously got an immense talent around him, there's no doubt about that. But I think his impact on games lessened as his career went on. Yeah. Primarily because I think defenders worked out kind of what he was going to do and what way he was going to go and stuff. I think the one regret I have about Paddy McCourt is I would have liked to have seen him being given a 10-15 game run in the kind of key position where he would be there to kind of play make and kind of pass the ball and stuff like that, and not really be just relied on to go past players and stuff like that, because his passing was normally very good.
Well, I mean, one pass today that stands out. I mean, I didn't think it was offside, but the pass to Samaras on the would-be goal. I mean, it was like Tom Brady standing back in the pocket. It was just it was inch perfect. Yeah,
I mean, I think the one thing I always say, Paddy, and got his autograph with my son last year as well. He could have smiled a bit more. He could have looked like he was enjoying himself a wee bit more, because he always seemed kind of dour and stuff like that. And perhaps he is that kind of flawed genius type of person, what I mean? They kind of say that geniuses live on the line. But, and I mean, I think Paddy will go with the best wishes he most at the club. You'll always get people saying, good riddance and all that kind of thing. But for the money we spent on him and the times he gave us, I think it's been a pretty decent legacy, and I'm sure he's Celtic supporters would wish him all the best wherever he goes, and I'm sure we'll see his talents, flashing up on our TV screen somewhere else pretty soon.
I would absolutely agree. I've always sort of thought of Paddy as, the common wisdom with him and the label is a super sub, but in my opinion, he was more than that. I mean, in those games in November, December, obviously it's getting a bit colder. We're going up against sides like, obviously, Motherwell, Kilmarnock, St. Johnstone. The pitches are going to be absolutely horrible. These teams are just going to pack it in, and you need somebody who's good with the ball at his feet, navigating through traffic. And like you said, as time went on, teams started to figure out how to defend against them, because at times it did seem a bit predictable. He was a throwback. I mean, he was the type of player that you imagine, would be, waltzing around the midfield of Celtic Park, maybe in the early 80s, where there was much more value on, the creative aspect rather than, what we have and sort of the modern consummation of Scottish football and football in general to a certain extent is, keeping your shape, what we talked about just before we went on the air, where Paddy just doesn't fit into this era, and it's the sort of horses for courses type mentality, but Paddy did have that utility, and I agree completely. It would have been nice to see him get a run out in a string of games in those situations that lent themselves more towards towards his strong suit. So, but like you said, we wish him the best going forward. I wouldn't be surprised to see him turn up in the MLS at some point. I think that it would suit him to a certain extent. I think that his style of play, he might get another second or two on the ball, which I think could be quite valuable. And, no knock on the MLS, but I think that the sort of defending or lack thereof that's present in the MLS would certainly be susceptible to a player like McCourt. So
yeah, I know. I totally understand what you're saying there. Because the MLS defender I've seen, it can be good at times, but it's a bit robotic.
Yes, exactly.
And I think somebody that I think that's why players like Taylor and me could prolong their career 2 or 3 more years, because they've not got the fitness anymore, but they've got the football brain that can just outwit players who have been kind of conditioned to just be like, defend. Sometimes a football brain can take you a hell of a long way.
No question about it.
And I think you're right. I think at a slower pace, with Paddy's got more time in the ball, it'd be exceptional. In any league that was like that, basically.
No question about it. And add into, the point you bring up about, the sort of, the not just the football brain, which is certainly the case, but the instinct, the ability to make a decision at a moment's notice, and not even just make a decision, just react. I think that, that's going to be the next level of the sort of MLS growth, if you will, and the growth of the sport in this country and the development of American players. It's not so much, hearing the instructions from the managers or the coaches, but just reacting, and before you even have time to think. And the MLS is suited for, that player that might be on the later stages of their career, because, oftentimes you're afforded the liberty of having a player next to you that can do all of your running for you, and you can specialize a bit more. So I like I said, I wouldn't be surprised at all, to see him turn up in the MLS, but anywhere he winds up, you're always liable to see, a moment of brilliance and something that'll get the punters off their seats. So, I will always have fond memories of Paddy McCourt. Certainly. We mentioned Scott Brown getting the full 90 minutes. What do you make of, obviously his performance today was exceptional. Are you confident going into the game next week? Obviously, it's absolutely crucial going up against Scott Brown's former side, Anthony Stokes' former side. Do you have any reservations, doubts about his effectiveness going into that game next week? For me, I think he's untrappable at this point, considering the sort of impact that he's had over the past couple of games. No,
I don't have any doubts whatsoever. I think the performance he put in last week against St. Johnstone was nothing short of exceptional. It was like, you're talking about a guy who's not kicked a ball in 3 months, and he came in and was by far the fittest guy on that pitch. That's just phenomenal. And that just shows you the kind of professionalism and the attitude that he's got off the park, because, I know for a fact there are players who would, in his situation, they would have just switched off and went, I'll see you next season.
Exactly.
And that would have been it.
Exactly.
But he's come in, and he's come in fully vitality, fully freshness. He looks happy. He looks comfortable the way he's playing. He took a bit of punishment today. He never reacted to it. He just pointed it out to the referee. That was another one. And I think he's got the new first name on the team sheet next week because, Hampden, big pitch, really suited to him. Most of his best games for Scotland are at Hampden, and he is our captain, he is our leader, and he's got the hands that we want to see on that trophy.
No question about it, absolutely. And there was definitely some doubt, coming into the tail end of the season, especially after missing so much time and the nature of his injury. There were some very sort of grim words being spoken, degenerative, chronic, the type of things that would lead you to believe that his career may be winding up or maybe, not sort of having the same effectiveness going forward, but it certainly doesn't have that look at this point. He's really come back into the side, and it's perfect timing because this side needs to be firing on all cylinders going into the game next week. I think I'm delighted with the way that Neil Lennon has rotated the squad, I guess, in a sense. I had a lot of skepticism over these past several weeks about what is Neil Lennon doing. I mean, play the kids, don't play the kids, but I mean, what is the rhyme or reason for what you're doing? I mean, obviously he sent Gary Hooper and several others over to Dubai or wherever the hell they fuck off to get recharged, to get rested, and it's like, well, how do you switch the off button back on, and have players come back and be focused and be on form? But it looks like he's found that nice sort of blend. I was a bit confused or I guess surprised to see so many first team players come out today, but in reflection and in seeing the display on the park today, I think that he's struck the absolutely perfect note. You want the players to come in, get their confidence back, and get their form back, and he's certainly done that. Gary Hooper today, and especially last week, last time probably for him playing in front of the home crowd, the amount of work that he was putting in, the amount of running, was something that we haven't seen from him in quite some time. And it gets a bit cynical at times. I mean, talking about Gary Hooper, obviously the rumors, and I fully believe that next week will be the last time he's playing in a Celtic uniform, Celtic jersey rather. But you get into this cynical sort of mindset when we're talking about footballers. Especially the revelations coming from the secret footballer column. Which is absolutely fascinating, talking about the mindset of players these days and how fixated they are on the money, but the status that comes from the money. What you're earning in relation to your peers, and the sort of lack of regard for medals, for winning trophies, things of that nature. But it looks like Gary Hooper wants to have that last hurrah, to go out on a high and to give the supporters something really positive, happy memories on his way out. What's your take in terms of the game next week? I mean, over the past several weeks throughout this dry run, I have my doubts. I not really even so much my doubts, but it was just uncertainty. I don't know what team is going to show up. I don't know sort of what Neil Lennon's mindset is going to be. Let's look ahead to next week. It's going to be, I think, one of the biggest games for Neil Lennon thus far. I mean, obviously there's some context there. It certainly doesn't compare to Barcelona. It certainly doesn't compare to many of those Champions League qualifiers and the spectacle that goes around that. But in terms of Neil Lennon's legacy and in terms of Neil Lennon's CV, the knock against Neil Lennon, obviously, what I referred to a bit earlier, the Hampden hoodoo, and the sort of inability to complete the treble, that we've had the opportunity to have over the past several years. Certainly a double would do a lot to quell that. What are your thoughts going into next week? Are you much more confident now? I mean, it's hard not to be. And what are some of your keys going into that? I mean, it seems as though sometimes pretty consistently when we go to Hampden, our focus is someplace else. Doesn't look like the energy levels there or the commitment, but there's a lot of tactical sort of maladies that seem to be consistently repeating themselves when we do struggle like this. What are your keys, especially going up against this Hibs side, which it can be very, very dangerous?
Well, I think that if you were to ask Hibs fans, what their fear is for next week is if our players show up, and by that I mean actually put in the performances they're capable of, because I think that they feel that if we do that, then we'll drop them. You could arguably say that it's the two form teams of the country right now that are playing in the cup final, which makes it all good. In terms of the kind of legacy and all that and what we need, I mean, excuse me, if I'm Neil Lennon, there's small things that I would do that I think would be great for us. The first thing I would do is make sure the bus leaves for Celtic Park and goes to Hampden and goes through the supporters and makes the players completely aware of how much it means to the supporters between Celtic Park and Hampden, just to give them that feeling of who they're playing for and what it's all about and the cause that Tommy Burns often spoke about. Second of all, Tommy Burns done a great thing in the Celtic Airdrie Scottish Cup final when, it was going to be the first trophy in 6 years and we were all apprehensive, and I think anybody who was at that game will tell you it was an absolute nightmare. It was not an enjoyable experience. Even the final whistle was just all about relief and stuff. Is that what Tommy Burns did was line up our players in the tunnel beside the Airdrie players and told them what to keep their tracksuits on until they got on the pitch. And the reason for that was because they had the name Celtic on the back, and he wanted the Airdrie players to be looking over and just reminding them, you might think we're not that good, but we're still Celtic, And that's something I think we need to keep in, because Hibs fans have a doubt in their mind, and that doubt was created by what happened to them last year in the Scottish Cup final. And we need to ensure that doubt never leaves their head. We need to go at them right for the start, as Hearts did, as Falkirk did, and really get torn into them, like we did to Dundee United today, because, this should be our cup. It is our cup. We've won it more times than anybody, and Celtic, you think back to all the finals and the great finals and all that kind of thing. Fantastic record against Hibs. And there's a couple of interesting. I mean, everybody obviously talks about our Hampden hoodoo, but let's talk about Hibs' one. 1902 was the last time they won the Scottish Cup, and that wasn't even at Hampden. It was against us. And an incredible statistic about that is that since they beat us in that cup final in 1902, they've only actually ever beat us once in the Scottish Cup since, which was in 1986, a 4-3 defeat at Easter Road. So that's a massive weight of history to go against. Added to the fact that we are a better team than Hibs. Now, you could argue they've had the best player in Scotland this season. I think Griffiths is a fantastic talent and he deserves everything he gets because he's playing in a pretty average team and he has lit up that team and probably saved Hibs from fighting relegation this season. But if our focus is right, added to the weighty history we have behind us and the fantastic support we'll have at Hampden, then we really shouldn't have any problems. We certainly shouldn't be underestimating Hibs because they've got, as you say, we've got a player in that team that's capable of winning games on his own. But we've got 2 or 3 guys that are like that with own form, with the right focus, will win us the game. And in terms of Neil Lennon's legacy, whether Neil Lennon stays or goes in the summer, he wants to be that kind of Celtic manager who doesn't just win a league, he wins cups and he wins doubles and he wins trebles and all that kind of thing. And I think that, despite all the talk about Neil Lennon possibly leaving, and we all know the reasons why, and we all know that most of them are football related, is that I just wonder if Neil Lennon might, after the cup final, should we win the game, maybe just look at that kind of game and look back on the Alex Ferguson thing and think, he is in a position to be a guy that can get close to somebody like Alex Ferguson if he remains at Celtic Football Club, because we can really be dominating Scottish football for at least the next 10 years. And we could be putting trophies on the board non-stop and all that kind of thing. And Neil Lennon might think, hang on, I've had enough of this, that in the family. I would not hold that against him. I'd wish him all the best if that was his thinking. But I tell you, if he goes away somewhere, Everton, Leicester, all the jobs he's been linked to, I just wonder that in 3 or 4 years' time, when a new manager's came in and we're hopefully sitting on 5-6 in a row, that Neil Lennon's like, Jesus Christ, I could have been the guy at 110 in a row for us.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's the thing, and it's similar to kind of the Wayne Rooney situation, I think, at Manchester United, where it's kind of like, I want to leave and this, I've had enough of this thing. And, other people say, stuff him and all that kind of. I kind of like Rooney's attitude because he's like, well, if I'm not playing, I'm off.
Exactly.
Fine.
Yeah.
That's it.
And you can't blame him.
No, exactly, because he's a winner and he wants to go and win trophies and he wants to play and be the main man of the league. That's fine. But I'd say to Wayne Rooney after a couple of weeks, where are you going to go? Where exactly are you going to go? Because you want to go to Chelsea with their recent success, and then that's basically it. You want to go to Arsenal, never won anything for ages, and blah blah blah, and all the corporate fans have got and all that nonsense. Or do you want to stay here and become one of? I mean, if I'm Wayne Rooney's advisor, I'd be saying to him, listen, stay here in a couple of years and go back to Everton, and complete the circle, and then you walk away a hero with everybody.
Yeah.
And the same similarly with Neil Lennon, it's like if the family thing isn't as big an issue, and he is thinking football-wise, I would be saying to him, Neil, you went down to Nottingham Forest and you hated it after about 2 games because the intensity wasn't there and the passion wasn't there. you know what it's like at Celtic. Give yourself a good holiday and come back refreshed and get us in the Champions League again.
Yeah, very good shout. And in addition to, obviously Neil Lennon understands the history, understands the context, and he knows what the significance of football history is, and he obviously understands that a unified sort of managerial reign for 10 in a row certainly has a bit more of a cachet than sort of a patchwork, as we've seen from other sides of different managers. To be that man, to be the in charge for straight through the 10 in a row, like Big Jock did with the 9 in a row. That's just a completely different stratosphere altogether. So I definitely think that would weigh on his mind as he makes this decision, as he sort of evaluates his future and what his priorities are. Obviously that the money and the opportunities from other places, and certainly taking his family to a safer environment is certainly going to play a huge role in what he decides, or sort of the control that he has on his future. But all of these things that you're pointing out, I mean, we have Sevco or whatever consummation that they're even going to turn into next, Third Co or whatever it is. We have them on their knees, and we will have them on their knees for the next 20 years. All of the resources that they've had in the past, which weren't, essentially weren't even theirs, are not going to be available at all. In the future, They're going to have to run a much tighter ship. They're going to have to fly right. And as we're seeing over these past couple of years, they just can't do it. They go down to the third division and they're still bleeding money. They're still.
Well, I mean, I think the thing about that is that, the huge difference this season was the Champions League money, right? Now, we're already seeing the Champions League money in action, right? We've all got 100 quid for season tickets. Various things are happening inside Celtic Park in terms of gaying up things and all that thing. They're happening outside Celtic Park. Schools getting knocked down. They're going to build, a museum and a new ticket off, blah, 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 and all that kind of thing. And that's fantastic because most people say it's long overdue, myself included. Mm-hmm. If you then get that Champions League money again next season, I mean, where does that take you? I mean, it was... If you take yourself back to this time last season, Paul Murray and the Blue Knights were saying constantly that a NewCo was not an option simply because it was not sustainable. And the reason he said that was because of the 3 years without European football.
Right.
Whereas that was your income that took you. Now, we know that Sevco has been kind of shifting money left, right and centre out the club, and know that much has been coming in. And I think that the season ticket decrease by Celtic certainly influenced their season ticket pricing for next season, where I think it was going to drastically increase until we done that. And then I think we thought, oh my God, this is going to be a PR disaster. And that's fantastic. It's like, oh, we're going to freeze it because of the fans' loyalty. And I mean, I would be bollocks.
Exactly.
And what's clear is that Sevco, will go into administration. But the difference between that and last season is that they will not go into liquidation because, they'll get a CVA agreed this time because it will be far less debt.
Right.
And then somebody else will come in, probably the Blue Knights again, and buy the club. But whilst all that's going on, if we're then bringing in all this Champions League money and reinvesting it into the club and reinvesting it into support and reinvesting it into the team, then you're right, we're going to have our foot right on their throat for at least the next decade.
Oh, no question about it. We're going to, at least in my mind, the plan is to reinvest into the infrastructure of the club so that we have more and more revenue generating, apparatus. Look at this. I think it's kind of funny. Peter Lowell refers to it as a realm. I don't know if that's like Game of Thrones or what. But it's something that, like you say, is desperately needed. Obviously the Commonwealth Games coming, adding loads of infrastructure to that, and if Celtic can capitalize on this and provide some sort of pre-match or post-match entertainment resources, food, beverage, things of that nature to serve the supporters. I mean, let's be honest. There's nothing to do around the stadium except for fucking around up at the Forge. If you can have something that supports that serves the supporters while also brings more money into the club, I mean, why would you not do that?
Yeah, and I think one of the great ideas that's coming to Celtic is the building up a bigger family stand
yes.
in the Lisbon Lions End. I think I know it's hard on the people that sat there for a while and that kind of thing. But if you look at it in context, the creation of bars and bookies and stuff like that within the concourses of Celtic Park is going to get maybe an old school atmosphere back to Celtic Park right throughout the ground, simply because they drink, right? We all know that. Now, and that's fantastic. That's what we all want. Perhaps the people that didn't want that are people who bring kids to games.
Right.
So you put them all in the same section.
Right.
And you avoid that kind of conflict of somebody saying, oh, listen, I was at a game and there was all drunks around me, this, that, and next thing. Which, some will be justified, others would just be moaning about anything. So it's like, well, if you didn't want to do that, here's an option where you can actually go and take your kids in a family environment where there'll be no drink, there'll be no bookies, and everything within this bit will be family orientated.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very, very shrewd move.
Agreed.
You've got, I've seen this week where you've got the new Safeco chief executive. I mean, it's hard to keep up. There's one every week, but he's been saying that Celtic are contemplating shutting stands in the ground, which is just utter nonsense. You know what I mean? But that's the media going in and trying to butter up a new Safeco CEO by saying, we know things are bad now, but hey, they're still bad at Celtic as well, which is just laughable. It's absolutely laughable. And these are the kind of things where, this is what kind of Murray tried to do to us 20 years ago, where he would just keep driving in the wedge continuously and putting the knife through our heart by continually spending money and redeveloping the ground and all that. We were kind of on the bones of our arse. The difference, of course, being is that we're spending our money that we earned completely by our own football and merit.
Exactly.
Whereas they spent the Bank of Scotland's money that they never paid back.
Absolutely unbelievable. And at the end of all this, we will continue to be ever more sustainable while they're struggling to get back and attain some sort of respectability, if they possibly could ever find any. Speaking of which, I know this is a bit off topic, but I think it's applicable, especially considering the atmosphere at Tannadice today. John Daly, signing for Sevco.
John Daly's a zombie.
John Daly is a zombie. Apparently, he's going to Sevco, and as I mentioned a bit previously, the revelations from the unnamed footballer, and the essays that have been released as well as the book, it gets back into that point of the mentality of the modern footballer not being focused so much on the values, the ethics, and the morals of the team that you play for, and winning trophies, playing at the highest level. It's all about money. Do you think that obviously John Daly's made up his mind as it pertains to that, and it's a world that's run by money. Let's be honest. The status that comes with it, and sort of the toys that you can accumulate as a result of it. But do you think that that obviously we've had differing experiences over time in terms of the testing of the Sevco support, in terms of their tolerance, in terms of their, a sort of ability to be civil in some sort. What do you think the response is going to be to John Daly within the sulfur, smoked and filled walls of Ibrox? Do you think that this is going to be the sort of thing where maybe it could be a learning and growing opportunity for the filth, or he could really be in for a lot of I don't want to be overly dramatic, but he could be in for a lot of hassle, at the very least from this.
I think amongst their supporters, you're always going to have the kind of never, never, never mentality through a lot of them. But the situation they're in right now, I think Pope Francis could sign for him, and if he was scoring goals, they'd accept him. It really is that bad. And you touch on him. Here's John Daly, a guy from Dublin, Celtic supporter. Decides, I'm going to go and play in the second division for the rest of my career. And you get pundits on Radio Scotland saying, why on earth does he want to go drop to the level? Come on, Biggie Small said it, make money, make money. That's it. That is it in a nutshell. He wasn't on that good a wage at Dundee United. And Dundee United, to try and put some background into this, Dundee United had a budget in place for next season. They knew they were going to be losing certain players, i.e. Daly, Russell, maybe expecting a bid for Mackay Stephen as well. That could happen, they might know, whatever. And then they come up with this ludicrous case against them where they're having to pay $250,000 for some guy they signed a few years ago. It wasn't even signed by Jackie or anybody like that, and that's kind of went into the budget, which kind of makes the selling of Johnny Russell a kind of necessity, if you like, because Jackie knows the huge job that he's got at Dundee United. He went into a club where the players weren't happy. They did not like the regime that they were previously under Peter Houston. They had hardly, I think they'd won one home game all season.
Yeah.
Younger players felt terrified in the regime because of the way the previous manager kind of conducted himself and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, they know that it was a huge job. And then that kind of thing goes into the fire where it's like, oh, now we've got this 250 grand bill.
Which for a team like Dundee United is substantial.
It's absolutely massive. I mean, I'll tell you, Eddie Thompson, who bought Dundee United a few years ago and died a couple of years ago, and then gave it to his son. They are literally at breaking point. I mean, that was a family that was pretty well off, and they're not that well off now.
Yeah.
Because they've had to keep subsidising it. So Jackie has went in there with a remit of kind of like, try and make a profit in the transfer market while strengthening the team.
Mm.
Not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Any stretch of imagination.
Sure.
But what they have got on their side is they've got a kind of stunning will to win and a sort of steely determination to do well. And, I would, after games that we play against Dundee United, I would maybe call or text Sid and, have a discussion, a respectful discussion. I would not like, I get it up here or anything like that. It's his job, but...
Sure.
Normally, what do you think, pal, and that kind of thing. And the answer of the day was pish, So I think reading between the lines, he briefly said after the game was that he didn't expect Celtic to be as strong today, player-wise. Mm. And he took a gamble on a back three, which, completely failed. Let's face it,
Yeah.
And then, they switched to a 4 again, but by that time the game was done.
Yeah.
Now, added to this is that they've got this contract wrangle thing going on with Partick Thistle, which is, effectively Thistle are asking for 80 grand compensation to Dundee United.
Right.
For taking the management team. Now, I can't go into that too deeply because there's got to be litigious, I think, pretty soon.
Sure.
But I think what I would say about that is if you bring in a guy as a manager on really, really poor money, even by First Division standards, who then builds a foundation that gets you into the SPL, to ask for 80 grand on top of that is pretty rich as far as I'm concerned.
It's a bit petty. I mean? It's a bit petty, no question.
And it has got petty. And I would, again, I know certain things about him behind the scenes, and again, can't really see too much about it. But what I would say is, if anybody wants to know what's going to go on behind the scenes, have a look at all the interviews that Partick Thistle done when they won the league, that kind of thing, and just count how many times Jackie McNamara's name was mentioned. Because I tell you, it was none.
Yeah, which is absolutely unbelievable considering the role that he played and their come up. I mean, it was impossible to ignore what Partick Thistle were doing in the first half of this season, and I obviously that gets the attention of Celtic supporters, for obvious reasons, but from a footballing perspective generally as well. A couple of years ago was Derek Adams. This partnership of Jackie McNamara and Sid, as you mentioned, is really on the up. Certainly they have their hands full with this Dundee United job and the remit that they've been charged with. But you have a unique perspective. Obviously, you have a relationship with both Jackie and Simon Donnelly. Tell us about what they found when I think this is interesting in the context of I could absolutely 100% see Jackie McNamara and Simon Donnelly on the touchline at Celtic Park one day as Celtic manager, Jackie McNamara. But obviously on the heels of this result and some of the other results that we've had against Dundee United, there are going to be skeptics with that. There are going to be people who are saying the same thing about Jackie just now that they were saying about Paul Lambert when he was at Livingston, and we all know what the sort of transformation of his managerial career has been, the trajectory. Same things that were said about Neil Lennon when he was the caretaker manager. So it's certainly something that you don't want to overlook in spite of what's happening. But give us some context in terms of, because you have a unique access to that. What did they find when they went to Dundee United, and what are some of the things that they've had to change? What's sort of the mindset and the mentality that they're trying to transform at Dundee United, and what's their philosophy?
Well, when they were in there, they found their squad really low in confidence, and the first game was obviously against Sefco, so we can't look too much into that. If we're going to get the worst team in Scotland as our first game, then that's a good start. They won a few games and all that, and the remit was to get into the top 6, which was no guarantee whatsoever when they went in. So they achieved that. And they'll be the first to tell you, like the 6-2 game against us and today and stuff, they'll learn more from their games than they've all beating other teams, you know. And they, some of the things that's happened to them in terms of when they go beat up in Motherwell at Paradise and stuff like that, is that they know what they need to iron out the team, you know. They see the mistakes and they know that they're easily rectified and stuff like that. We simple adding players in and shifting them about and whatever. The first thing that they've really had to do with this team and going onwards is to instill a belief in them, because they've got a good set of players there. They've been absolutely decimated with injuries in the last few months. Johnny Russell, breaks his ankle in the first couple of weeks, and it's like, oh my god! And then Gavin Gunnan goes out and stuff like that,
and they've had to replace with these kids, which exactly. Truth be told, I mean, there's a lot of talent there, but I mean, they're raw.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, obviously Daly had his head turned in that time as well, and, I know for a fact that they were the last to know about that, I remember speaking to Sid, slagging him off a bit about Daly, going to Safeco, when it kind of came out, and he was kind of like, what are you talking about, and then the dawning comes, and then you can just tell the kind of like, right, okay, I really can't speak about this just now, so you can kind of tell their attitude. And I can also tell you right now that there's both of them say to you, what are you doing? Like, you could be going to somewhere far better than this. But the money that they're offering is just so good that that's where he's going. But in terms of they two, what I would say about Jackie McNamara is that Jackie McNamara's public persona is as far away from his private persona as you could get, People, you say to people, what do you think? He's a bit dour, and it sounds like it's like pulling teeth trying to get a conversation. But he's not like that at all in private, And he's got a huge respect amongst the players in that as well. They added in Darren Jackson as a first team coach, and Jackson was doing that at Thistle on a kind of non-pay basis, coaching strikers and stuff like that. And Darren Jackson is. I said this. I'll be honest, I absolutely despised Dan Jackson when he played and stuff. And Sid said to me, I told him the first day he signed for Celtic, I despised him because he was just one of the players. He really,
right.
I'll never forget a game at Celtic Park when we played Hibs. Always scored a penalty about 7 minutes ago, and he ran up to the section I was sitting in, and he imitated that he had like a mobile phone in his hand.
Yeah,
as a celebration. And apparently that was because his brother-in-law had stole his mobile phone for a laugh. And that was him telling his brother-in-law that he knew it was him, basically, or something like that. Jackson's a character, he's the guy. He'll be the guy getting in players' faces if they're not performing and stuff like that. He's a funny guy. Like he said to me that, in regards to Wim's Tims, he said, I don't know why you made that book all about Jackie and Sid. He said, it took him 3 and 4 years to win that league. It took me 1.
Yeah.
And that's just with A3, they're not going to accept substandard performances and stuff like that, and I would fully expect Dundee United with a good pre-season under their belts to be our main challengers next season, just given the way that they talk about football, the determination they've got. They really keep a close eye on Celtic. I've had numerous conversations about Celtic performances. Sid, after the Motherwell game, was just going on about how, what happened to the pulled that jersey on. There's a standard required, and that's it. And if you didn't, you can't get to it, then you die trying, basically, And Jackie's a prime example of that, because
sure.
Jackie was a guy who was in and out of Celtic teams under various managers and went on to captain the club.
Right.
So that's the kind of steel in his spine that, it's no for bending. And one other thing I would say about Jackie as well is that I think that he gets abuse because the public perception is that he had a testimonial for Celtic, made £500,000 and then ran out the door as quick as he could.
Right.
And that just is not the case. Jackie never wanted to leave Celtic, but was never contacted by Gordon Strachan or Peter Lawwell at any stage in the summer until he was on his way down to sign for Wolves for Mick McCarthy and was driving in his car, and Peter Lawwell phoned him and says, well, give me the contract you want. And people were saying, Jackie runs away, this, that, and next thing. Jackie could have easily just turned the car and went back to Celtic and said, no, I'll give Mick McCarthy my word.
Yeah.
And, I know Jackie well enough to know that he would have walked back to Celtic Park to continue to play for Celtic, but he'd given Mick McCarthy his word. So, despite knowing that's exactly what the perception would be of him, he still went to Wolves because he's given Mick McCarthy his word. So, the determined guys, they got a chance at Thistle. They were fighting relegation at the time. They had no money. Crowds were on the drop. They turned it around. They produced a championship-winning team, a team that almost won a double this season, and that was in the space of 18 months. I would expect the same again to happen at Dundee United. No so much between winning the championship, but certainly we being our main challengers next season.
Yeah, no question about it. I think that's important to understand to get a sense for the type of person that Jackie is. The point that you bring up regarding when he left and went to Wolves. I mean, that's important. To have somebody with that level of character and that level of integrity. Obviously we have our opinions about Peter Lawwell and other principals within Celtic Park and what their intentions are and motives and so on. But it's refreshing, in such a cynical time to hear stories about that and to have people who you can sort of refer to, that have that character and that integrity, like I laid out. So he's charged with. And I don't want this to turn into the Dundee United show, but I find it fascinating because, again, it's the type of situation where at one point or somewhere down the road, I mean, you never know, but I would certainly suspect that he would be a prime candidate if Celtic needed a manager, say 2-3 years down the line. So what did he find in terms of, he's charged with bringing through talent, these young players and not being able to spend a lot of money. That requires a lot of sort of introverted attention, sort of infrastructure. What were the training standards like that he found from Peter Houston? What was things like nutrition, training and maintaining fitness? What was that like when he found it, and what is he doing now to try and develop these young kids? Because like I mentioned, there's loads of young talent coming through there. That is an opportunity for him to develop and follow through on that.
Well, I think that in terms of the actual training, the previous manager was also the Scotland assistant manager and, was working under the same guy that he previously worked under at Dundee United, Craig Levine. Mm-hmm. And so the training, what was happening, I think, at Dundee United was that the training that Peter Houston was kind of putting in there was similar to the training that was getting put into the international team. Mm. So with all due respect, it's like you wouldn't expect the Dundee United team to be as good as the Scotland international team. I know there's obviously a joke in there as well, but so I think it was mere Peter Houston would be mere sergeant major type,
Yeah.
Certain standards expected and all that kind of thing, and if you didn't, that's it. Whereas Jackie is mere kind of long term. Let's look at this. Let's look at the youth network. Who have we got? And all that kind of thing, and. Let's get them in. This was a perfect chance because when the goal was reached to the top six, added to the injuries, then that was a chance to go in and blood these young players. And, you had a 16-year-old playing at centre-half in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup against us. Now, we can look at the game today and say, it was a bridge too far and they played crap and all the rest of it. But you were at the game, we beat them 6-2. We absolutely murdered them.
Yeah.
And he got within 6 weeks of that, he got damn close to knocking us out the Scottish Cup semi-final.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
No
that's
question.
Not a bad turnaround.
Especially with the injuries, like we've talked about.
Yeah, the Johnny Russell injury was absolutely huge.
Yes.
We had a situation in January where they had two bids in for Johnny Russell, the Crystal Palace and Sheffield United, around the £450,000 mark. And they were just like, come on.
Wow.
It's just a joke here.
Yeah.
They previously sold David Goodwillie for £2 million to Blackburn.
Right.
And, with all due respect, David Goodwillie couldn't release Johnny Russell's boots. So, they were kind
especially
of like that.
on a night out in the Lash in Glasgow.
Well, if we were going tag team fighting, you'd take Goodwillie.
Johnny Russell on Goodwillie's back.
Exactly, but so they had that. Now, bear in mind they came in about 2 days before the transfer deadline, and the first thing they were saying was, "Well, Johnny Russell might go." Now, Johnny Russell at that time didn't want to go to Crystal Palace and Sheffield United. I think everybody in the world knows Johnny Russell wants to play for Celtic, right? And Jackie, said that to him, that if you want to make that move to Celtic, I'll help you get it, but stay now, for God's sake.
Right.
But then we also had the scenario where Celtic were sitting bracing themselves for a bid they couldn't turn down for Gary Hooper in January, which never really materialised. But bids went in, but they were nowhere near Celtic's valuation. So on that basis, there was also a deal in place where if Gary Hooper had left, Russell would have came to us, and Dylan McGeoch would have went to them on loan to the end of the season. And he was somebody that they targeted within the squad that that they like, but also to say to the fans, because it's if you're a new manager coming in and the first thing that happens is your best player's sold, it's not a really good start.
No.
So they had to have somebody to kind of come in, and I'll be honest, I've bent their ear quite a few times about Paddy McCourt, saying why don't you go for him and all that kind of thing, and it's sort of, well, maybe that sort of thing. Let's keep him in the SPL and what have you. But
he'd absolutely destroy us. I know it. He would come back to haunt us every time we play them.
Well, I mean, that's something that seems to happen to us quite a lot, but it's funny bringing that up actually, because I was talking to a guy, and I'll not name him for obvious reasons, but somebody who played for Motherwell the day that Scott McDonald scored the 2 goals against us to deny us the league. And this guy's like a big Celtic supporter. Couldn't meet a bigger Celtic supporter. And, so obviously that topic came up, and I was like, I see this, it just drives me insane. It always seems to be a Tim that scores against us, and denies us these kind of things. And he said, no, what should make you even more mad is the fact that I could tell you right now, there's about 6 Tims in that Motherwell team that weren't trying at all that day. So,
what does that say about us?
Exactly, right. But, no, I mean, I think, Jackie's nobody's fool, and, I mean, they're switched on as anybody could be. And just because they kind of didn't go shouting and bawling to the rafters about stuff and all that, they're really keen students of the game.
Yeah, they come off as very cerebral.
Yeah, and they're always looking at different kind of tactics, and even to the extent where my son, eldest son James, was playing in a kind of Scottish Schools of Excellence trial and all that, and I said to Sid about it, and he said, "Oh, what position is he playing?" I said centre half and all that, and he gave me a few tips that I gave to James, and I tell you, he implemented them in his game, and he played really well in the game. And there was things that were just, they weren't like, Joke Steen, Alec Ferguson masterclass, but there was just a couple of obvious bits of advice that perhaps, coaches and stuff, never really thought about. And they were basically just saying, one of the things he said was, about fullbacks. He said, remember, your fullbacks are in that position for pace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
If they've not got pace, they're not going to be playing fullback at any level. So, if you're getting a ball, put it down the channel for your fullback to run it. Well, chances are he's faster than the guy he's playing against in midfield.
No question. I mean, pace, but also the lungs of a hippopotamus. I mean, you cannot stop running. It's bombing up and down the flanks. I mean, especially if you want to play in the type of system that is going to be exciting, attacking, and fun to watch.
And one of the obvious things that's happened in football in the last 5 years is the kind of relegation of sort of John Hartson type players.
Yes.
Who just didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
The reason it didn't exist anymore is because centre halves know how to defend against them now. Where in the past it would have been you need to get tight, stop them turning, and then big John Hartson would just roll you, and then that'd be away.
Yeah.
Now it's like give yourself a yard, have your hand on his back, but keep that space between your body and your fingers, so that when he turns, he's facing you,
right,
rather than going past you. And just new kind of things. And I think that in football these days, there's so much emphasis on tactics and all that kind of thing. But as Brian Clough always said, it's about players.
Yeah.
Tactics don't win your game, players do. And, I think that perhaps in Scotland's football now, we've kind of lost that in terms of the characters, the way we express ourselves on the park. Young players, certainly at Masson's level, he plays for Spartans. I mean, the coach, I still watch him, he gives them 15 minutes coaching at half-time and before games. You're talking about 12-year-old laddies.
Right.
Their hormones are running through their head all the time. They can't concentrate, they're fidgeting, they get a hard on every 5 minutes. And they're supposed to listen to 15 minutes of coaching. Even Martin O'Neill said, with top players like Sutton and Larson, you walked in, you gave them 2 minutes, because any more than that, just forget anyway. So I think that in Scottish football in general, that's the road where we need to go, where we need players again the freedom to express themselves and stop talking about, keeping your shape and marking space. People forget, I talked about so fair. Andy Roxburgh was one of the architects of zonal marking. A concept where you mark a space on the football pitch.
Right.
Now, bit by bit, zonal marking's getting destroyed by players with brains.
Oh, no question.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's it. And so I think that, if you were to put it in context between Jackie and Peter Houston, Peter Houston would be a dinosaur and Jackie would be a kind of evolving football coach,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no question about it. I appreciate you sort of bearing with me through that, but I find it interesting. I mean, we talk so much about prospective players, analyzing their strengths, their weaknesses, what they're good at, and how they might fit with us. But I think it's equally useful of an exercise to do the same with coaches and managers, especially when you're talking about former Celtic greats like Jackie McNamara and certainly Simon Donnelly. So it's always interesting stuff, and I know that a lot of people are following their managerial trajectory, and there's a thirst for sort of what makes them tick and what to look for.
Yeah, well, I'll just say as well, I always say to the two of them, Jackie's a Celtic great. Sid, well, I mean, it's something they often have a laugh about. If there's any time they kind of, take umbrage of that, I say, you never scored against the Huns. That's the reality. He tries to claim a goal that he crossed in once at Hampden and Craig Moore put it in the net, and it's like, Craig's nobody would give him the goal, but I always remember that. It's just all fun. But no, it is. I mean, it's when I ask Sid about games after I've played them and that, he always comes up with things that I've never seen,
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, that's why he's paid to be a football coach, because he sees things that hunters didn't, That's kind of the difference and all that. But I would certainly say, I mean, you're totally wrong, but I think that the way they're progressing, I would expect a similar scenario to Partick Thistle, whereas they will turn themselves into a team that's up there challenging, and they know that they would argue that they've got a better squad of players than St Johnstone, Inverness, Ross County. Yet they're sitting sixth, and St Johnstone are going to Europe, and so that'll be their aim next season to kind of at least get into that third place, and hopefully on their first side to be challenging as best they can for the title.
Well, I think that they certainly have the capacity to do just that. It's the type of thing where and looking back, I mean, there's a pretty consistent trajectory, and yes, it's going to be rocky in the beginning as the footing is found and certain things are adapted and changed. As it appears for the better, getting players back fit, and having the first full season together as a unit certainly can be refreshing and a more accurate sort of gauge with that. We talked briefly about Johnny Russell. Obviously, he got a run out today. Had an ankle break this season, which is certainly not just a blow for Dundee United themselves, but also for him. As you mentioned, he's a Celtic supporter. It's the worst kept secret in the world that he'd like to come to Celtic. Would you buy him? Do you rate him? I mean, do you think that he would fit into this sort of I don't even call it like this generation, but I guess this template, that we've been in over the past several years. I mean, obviously there's going to be some change. It's not even really so much of a rumor anymore. Gary Hooper is definitely going to be going in the summer. I'm sure you'd agree with that. Do you think that Johnny Russell would fit? Do you rate him? I mean, should we be in for him now? Should we wait? What are your thoughts?
To be honest, I never really rated him.
I didn't either.
I looked at him in games and I thought he doesn't make a big enough impact in games to play for Celtic, As a forward player at Celtic, you're going to have a lot more of the ball than you will at Dundee United. So the spotlight's going to be on you a lot more and stuff like that. But having said that to kind of Sid, especially where he's just like, oh, you must be joking, he's a fantastic player. He's going to get better and better and better. Kind of about his better judgment and that. And sometimes players come into teams when they're surrounded with better players, they just flourish. That perhaps and I know Sid would never say this, but perhaps the kind of flaws in his game are created by the lack of quality around him.
Yeah. And
that if quality players were around him and kind of knew his game, that he would then go on to become a superstar at Celtic. I think he could end up being a kind of Scott McDonald type character, Whereas if he bulks up a wee bit, comes to Celtic, he might just grasp the nettle immediately and just go straight into it.
Yeah.
And certainly what you could guarantee for him is 100% commitment because, as we all know, he's absolutely Celtic through and through, goes to every Celtic game he can get to, is going to the cup final next week, I know for a fact. And, so that's the kind of players I think we all want to see at Celtic Park.
Sure.
People that have got that kind of feeling for the club.
Sure.
I was kind of talking about it last night, and we were talking about a wish list of players that if we could get players, realistically. And I was talking about guys like Snodgrass at Norwich, James McCarthy, Jordan Rhodes. I said there'd be 3 players right there. I know it's probably way out of our league in terms of the transfer fees.
Yeah.
But there's 3 guys that are Celtic daft, right? Who are, quite obviously good football players. I mean, I think Snodgrass has been absolutely phenomenal for Norwich.
And they all grew up within like 3 miles of each other in Glasgow, did they not?
I mean, Robert Snodgrass lived in Sword Street in Glasgow, which is right next to the Belgrove Hotel.
Uh-huh.
And absolute Celtic through and through. And, my thing about that is he played for Livingston first.
Right.
That's when we should have got him.
Yeah.
We should be getting players then. But in the context there, in the society we live in, if we sign a guy for Livingston, people are just like, what are we doing that for?
Right. No, you're right.
We should be getting bigger and better.
You're right. I mean, to the point of, where people were talking about Lambert when we were bringing in Mowbray, and it's like he's just, finding his feet at Livingston. It's a similar thing.
It's the same way Jordan Rhodes.
Yeah.
I knew we were never going to sign him because he went for £8 million. But I'll tell you right now, in my opinion, if we signed him for £8 million in August, he would have scored 50 goals this season in the SPL, and we worth double that right now.
And I think that would have been symbiotic as well. I think that he would have gotten more out of playing for us than he's getting playing for Blackburn. I mean, let's be honest. The comparatively, people can talk all they like about the quality of Scottish football and the level that it's on comparatively to the English system. But playing for Blackburn Rovers and sort of languishing through the Championship, and you talk about the surrounding cast making you better. I mean, Jordan Rose is cast out on an island. He might as well be. Comparatively, the quality of support that he'd get and the service that he'd get, I think you're absolutely right. He'd go absolutely nuts.
Especially when you consider that the media in this country are linking us constantly with James McFadden. Where does the signing of James McFadden fit in with our kind of plan and how we sign football players? The guy's like 29-year-old. It would be his last move. What would be the point?
We're locked with. We're rumored to be with. Scott McDonald once again, which is, as nauseating as the Craig Bellamy rumors were constantly as nauseating.
I'm sure that's a lot to do with the fact that Scott McDonald and Neil Lennon are big pals and always were big pals and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Scott McDonald was a great player for Celtic, 5 years ago.
Yep.
But we're 5 years on for that since he was at his best, and that's no way we should be looking at all.
Yeah, no question.
I would rather, with any shadow of doubt, give Tony Watt his chance, give Dylan McGeoch his chance, than even go close to signing guys like McFadden and McDonald, because that doesn't fit in with us whatsoever.
I agree completely.
I mean, if we get take Dylan McGeoch, right? I mean, there's a guy, immense talent, right? He plays on the wing. He wants to play in the centre midfield. The argument is he's no physically strong enough to play in the centre midfield.
But he doesn't have the pace to play out wide.
Well, that's the thing, and people say, he's not physically strong to play centre of the park, and you think, because that really hindered Paul Scholes throughout his career.
Yeah, Iniesta's, Mr. Universe.
He's got immense talent. Now, if we gave him a run of games, and he'd done decent, we'd still get £1 million for him.
Right.
But if we get rid of him now, we'll probably get nothing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the kind of business plan that we should be doing, and that's why I think there's no way we should even considering going for McDonald or McFadden or whatever,
No, it's rubbish.
It's just, we've moved on to these kind of players.
Well, and I would almost prefer us, doing our shopping in the same market. Bring people in that we've never heard of. You take a look at them on YouTube, and it's like, this guy looks like, he's got a bit of talent in the Israeli league or the Turkish league or wherever. You bring him in for £1-2 million and then, have them develop and sell them on. I mean, obviously Johnny Russell being the exception there, being a sort of a domestic talent and a domestic acquisition. But if it's going to be, the type of thing where we're going to bring in players who are already in the SPL, may have to pay, £2 million for, I'm with you where we need to start picking out these players from, the Livingstons and the Air United and things like what we did with Tony Watt, and we saw the first run out for Atajic today with the starting 11. There's some confused looks, not just in terms of how to pronounce his name, but throughout the pub, it's like who is this kid? And with the exception of a couple of us that have followed sort of the development squad, and I first was introduced to him just sort of following. Paul George and James Keatings. And, obviously those were familiar names for me, seeing how they were doing. But, you click on one of the videos on the Celtic YouTube channel, and here's this Tajic. He's scoring 4 goals for the development side, going up against, the Aston Villas, the Ajax development sides. And it's like, Jesus, who is this? And he's 18 years old. I mean, he's from Sweden. But, it's the type of thing where, you give him 10, 12 minutes to come out, and, if he doesn't have an impact on the game, people are like, well, who the hell is this? But he has loads of talent. I would be much more apt to sort of try and bed him in, get him into the starting 11. Like you said, I mean, Tony Watt, this isn't his first rodeo. He's familiar with traveling with the team. He's had several runouts, although I would have liked to have seen him play more, especially sort of in the run into the season. But I don't have as much of a concern about him betting into the side and being effective. I mean, Tony Watt is a multi-dimensional sort of player. I mean, he can create his own chances. He's exceptionally strong on the ball. I think he does need to work on his instincts a bit in terms of his timing, in terms of when to run. But those things come. I mean, with experience and things like that. And Tajic, from all accounts, is a finisher, and that's an exciting thing to see.
Well, Tajic come in pretty much the same time in the season as Tony Watt came in last season.
Yeah.
So, and that was a kind of, all right, he didn't have the same impact as Tony Watt did when he came in. But,
who does?
I'm pretty certain that Tajic will be scoring the winning goal against Real Madrid in October. He's singing these to the rafters. But no, I mean, that has to be the way. Celtic have set the template how to run a football club in terms of promoting to within and, players wise and stuff. And, obviously massive kudos to John Park as well, who's
no question.
He has just an ability which is, second to none. Just, as you say, finding these guys, that we didn't hear it. And I think it shows you how football's changed, because, 15 years ago, if you signed a foreign player, 5,000 people extra turned up to a game to see what it was like. Now, when you sign a foreign player, 5,000 people watch him on YouTube and already make a decision on him, before he's even kicked a ball for Celtic. So, I think that it's been successful. We spoke about at the start of the season when we signed, people like Ambrose and stuff like that, and Lassad and Miku and stuff, that in the kind of market that we're in, that if you sign 4 of these players, if you get 2 good ones, you're doing quite well.
Absolutely.
And you're not breaking the bank to do it. I don't think anybody wants to see us go back to the days of the Robbie Keanes and all that kind of thing.
No.
It doesn't do anything for the club.
No. And let's be honest, we're marking the 10-year anniversary of Seville. Our wage bill at the time was the 6th highest in the UK. Those days are gone. I mean, we're the English league has moved on, in terms of the television revenue that they're bringing in. I mean, they're at a completely different level. We're never going to be there as long as we stay in Scotland. We've actually retracted. Those days are gone. Like you said, I mean, we have to be smart in making these purchases. I mean, you look back to the summer, Lassad, a minimal transfer. Miku was a loan deal. I mean, we spent literally, pennies, and what we got for it. I think, to your point, I mean, if 2 out of the 4, considering the precious little that we spent, hit, then certainly we're way ahead of the game. And a lot of people like to give Peter Lawwell a lot of credit for this financial position that we're in and that we're continuing to progress through. And a certain, I'm not going to say he had nothing to do with it, but the most important principle in all of this, in my opinion, has been John Park. Obviously Neil Lennon deserves a huge amount of credit for the managerial acumen that he showed, not just getting us the victory against Barcelona, but getting us into the group stages itself. I mean, that had such a huge impact in terms of our top line, but identifying these players and bringing them in, John Park, I mean, his value just cannot be measured.
Well, see in this kind of strategy, I mean, you could easily be in a situation where we could be talking about a situation which is like, why do we keep bringing in all these players who are hopeless? Because I've never heard of, and you do peanuts, you get monkeys and all that kind of thing. And so it's an incredibly hard job. I mean, I know John Park's not kind of in the spotlight as such, that if the team starts playing crap and losing every week, he's not going to be the one that gets fired. The manager's going to be in the firing line for that. But similarly, the manager has to put his trust in John Park and that the players that he's recommending, because obviously we all know that the system at Celtic is, if Neil Lennon says I need a left back, John Park says there's 5, that's the best one, what your wife's doing. And we'll try and get him, if we can't get him, we'll go to the second one, and so on and so on.
Right, and that's what's going to get done.
Aye, so there's no guarantee in that whatsoever. You know, there's no guarantee of success. It's not like saying, "Oh, if every club done that, everybody will be fine," because you know you're going to get a lot of draws. So it's as simple as that.
Right.
But you know, we've had far more hits than misses, and I would suggest that you know at least one of these players, Victor Wanyama, will pay for every other player that we signed when he eventually goes.
No question about it, and it's just one player.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's definitely worthwhile.
And that's a good point as well. You know, the importance on that relationship between the chief scout and the manager can't be understated. I mean, thinking about Tony Mowbray's time at Celtic, I mean, you know, here he had a particular amount of money, or you know, it's argued or speculated that he was under the impression that he had much more money than he thought he had. He goes and spends £4 million on Marc-Antoine Fortuné, and then he has absolutely nothing left. So we're left scrambling. Yeah. He guts the team and has nothing left in the winter window except for a loan deal for Edson Brafheed, and then you know the kit sales initiative put forth by Dermot Desmond, bringing in Robbie Keane. I mean, it was absolute shambles, and we were looking at players like you know, Kilgallen, who you know I believe was it Sunderland at this point, and you know the other guy Ramis, you know, who's floating about in England just now. When you don't have that sort of reconciliation with the you know, your scout and the manager, as well as you know, the chief executive, as it is at Celtic, you know. There can be a lot, you know, sort of loggerheads there, you know, where it's almost paralysis by analysis. There's all sorts of things getting in the way. It seems like a well-oiled machine, to continue the cliches for me, you know, where there's a process that's followed and you can't argue with the results. Yes, you can pick out, you know, some flops that we've brought in if you really want to get picky. But to your point, bringing in a player like Wanyama is going to pay for everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you take back to the Robbie Keane situation, he came in, he scored 16 goals, done reasonably well, but the two games he went missing in were Ibrox and the Ross County semi-final.
Ross County,
and that's the games that you actually brought him into, you know, win.
Exactly.
And people, Robbie Keane, big Celtic man, comes to Ireland and all this kind of thing. There's nothing at Ibrox.
He's a big everybody fan.
There's nothing at Ibrox, and I would argue that there's guys in the youth team and they're in the first team now, Forrest and McGill, I run through a brick wall for Celtic and G everything at Ibrox. You know, and that is the road that I want to see us continue doing. I mean, if you take, for example, Michael Lustig, he comes in January, and by all intents and purposes, people are like, "Oh God, he's hopeless. He looks like a porn star," and this, that, and
well, and especially on the heels of Adam Matthews was playing quite well at the time. So why are we going in for a left back? I mean, granted, we got him for free, but to your point,
yeah, and then but that 6 months molded him and got the pre-season in to become a top performer this season.
Yes.
You got him for £500,000 January last year. If he decided he'd had enough and wanted to leave in the summer, he'd probably get £5 million from him.
No question. No question about it.
And added to the service that he gave you, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm going to see, I mean, Ajax were a phenomenal side in the 70s, won 3 European Cups in a row because they had a genius pulling the strings, and then went through a fallow period and were like, how do we get out of this? And that's how they go to it, the exact system that Celtic are doing now. And then went on to win another European Cup in '95 and go on and put top players in the top clubs all around the world. You know, the guys like Kluivert and all that kind of thing. All came out of that system where Ajax were like, and it, you know, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it takes longer, it does. And we all know in football, myself included, we've all got no patience whatsoever. You know,
That's for sure.
It's easy to say, you know, if he's turning to say, I'd like to see young players come in next season, let them develop and all that, and then you say, aye, that's a great system. Then we lose the first 8 games, you want to kill people. You know? Exactly. I mean, I'm as bad as anybody with that, so I'm not casting anything, but...
I'm the worst.
You are the worst.
I love Sammy. I love him. I was singing the song today. You can hear it over there. He floats like he can... Oh, it's the worst.
Were you in the club watching it, like?
Yeah. I have no shame. A lot of speculation going on at the moment. You know, as we alluded to a bit earlier with regard to Neil Lennon and his future. You know, the impact that he's had on this club. I mean, you know, naysayers can find logic in any sort of angle to support their statement. And certainly Neil Lennon is not short on naysayers from both sides of the divide, certainly. But looking back on his time, what's going to be, if this is indeed his last game as Celtic manager next week, what's his legacy going to be?
I think Neil Lennon's legacy is that he put Celtic back on the map. We've been through a period where, with hindsight, you could say Strachan stayed a year too late. I actually brought this up a couple of weeks ago with a mate where we drew 0-0 at Easter Road in May 2009 was one of the worst experiences I ever supported Celtic for me because, one goal wins you the league and we didn't manage to do it. Then we bring in Tony Mowbray and we were as far away from doing anything in Europe as could be humanly possible at that point. And then we bring in Neil Lennon and the start of his European stuff was pretty crap as well. You know, things like Utrecht, which I watched in Chicago through my hands basically, and Jos Højveld, every time I hear that prick's name mentioned on the EPL,
Morten Rasmussen.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, it was horrific. So for that, to go for that, to not just beating Barcelona, but, beating Spartak Moscow home and away, getting the first away victory in the Champions League, getting us into the last 16, that put us back on the map. I mean, even today I heard we were talking about Roberto Mancini and saying, what did he get sacked for and all that? Was it for no winning the league? And one of the pundits says, well, he never done much in the Champions League. And another guy says, well, he had a tough group. And the boy says, I saw the Celtic. and that's still on their mind, you know what I mean? And he managed to negotiate it. I mean, Christ Almighty, we didn't just have Barcelona, a great Spartak Moscow team. We also had a Benfica team that almost won the Europa League.
Yep.
So, that was an incredible achievement. And, of course, the challenge that Neil Lennon faces should he stay is, will the subsequent shot stand up? Mm-hmm. Will we be able to negotiate our way through the 3 qualifiers, which, when you look at the teams we've got, it could be a walk in the park or it could be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
It's purely the luck of the draw.
Well, and who we get and where they're from. I mean, we could go up against one of these sides that's mid-season form, and it's a great uncertainty as to who is even going to be here. In key positions, who's going to be our main striker. For these games. I mean, important issues are going to be sort of left out in addition to these players just coming back after a layoff of some sort.
Yeah, I mean. And I think it's one of the things that's overlooked was that Helsinki and Helsingborg were both in their seasons when we knocked them out. And I've seen teams. I remember Hibs getting beat up a side for Sweden, who guys came out and said, "Oh my God, what a team they were!" Honest to God, I'm going to bet them to win the Europa League this year. And then they go 6 goals in the next game. Yeah, another nonsensical team. Yeah. And it is because, and it's all due to fitness and all that. So we all know that Neil Lennon implemented a plan last summer, which was to get into the Champions League. And it worked, and it was fantastic, to win 4 games in the qualifiers was phenomenal, which puts us in a situation where we're seeded for every round this time, and it's going to be difficult. I mean, I think the first game's like, the second week in July or something like that. I mean, that's going to be tough, but, you would like to think that the kind of plan in place would be, look, let's go all out to get into this Champions League again. And then once we hopefully do, then we can start rotating the squad. Once the SPL comes along, we can rotate the squad. It doesn't really matter if we fall points behind because we'll bring you back in September, October, just as the Champions League kicking off, and then you would expect us to kick on then because, we've got to keep looking at the bigger picture. We obviously want to win the league every year. We want to win the Scottish Cup. We want to win the League Cup and all that kind of thing. But how we will become a European force again is by continually being in the Champions League and getting that money and reinvesting it back in the squad and the infrastructure and all that kind of thing. And then if we can continue to do that, there's absolutely no limit to the success Celtic could have, because unlike teams like the Malagas and teams like that who appear because they've had a good run and stuff like that, we have a worldwide fan base who is just sitting there ready for success. And we'll fill that stadium and we'll fill the bars in America and Australia and round the world and all that kind of thing when that team's being successful. It's that simple, we're very fortunate in that because there's very few clubs in the world that can do that. Newcastle were in the Champions League for years, never really affected them, I mean, they're still hopeless,
That beer doesn't taste, good enough to justify.
Exactly. And so, everything's there in place. And we've got we talk about the fans and this, and we slag off this, that, and next thing. But the fans are Celtic,
Yeah, no question.
they are the ones that are there ready to just be like, listen, you give us that bit of success. Because the hardcore will always be there. We always know that. The hardcore, no matter what we're playing, what league we're playing, who we're playing, whatever you're playing, we'll be there. But we're actually talking about the guys who kind of, oh, well, you know, I'm going to play golf this Saturday, this, that, next thing. They'll not be playing golf if you're winning games in the Champions League. Just, and when we get to the point, the knock-on effect of that will be the people will realise that the only way to get into these Champions League games, by and large, will be to have a season ticket. So then we increase our season ticket holding and so on, and the club starts to progress. And we've got everything going for us, you know. We've got, you know, very little challenge in Scotland at the minute, and shouldn't have any for a long time. This is the time to put all that into place, to look beyond the SPL, look at the Champions League, look at your youth system, promote young players, give them the time. Because I know a guy, a journalist said to me, the best thing that's happened for Celtic in terms of the demise of Rangers is the fact that you now have the opportunity to blood young players.
Exactly.
You know? And even if you never spent another penny, that's a huge advantage over the rest of the SPL.
Well, and to a certain extent, it's an advantage over the rest of Europe, you know, because many of these big European sides can't do that in their domestic leagues. So what we are able to do is bring through the next generation of talent, increase their aptitude and you know, their abilities, and you know, it's sort of like, you know, the all tides raise all ships or whatever it is. I mean, if you have competition for key positions, you know, it's you know, just sort of common wisdom to say that the performance overall is going to be raised.
Yeah. Without a doubt, and that's it. I mean, you know, we've continually told we've got a standalone policy. Well, you know, let's just keep implementing that because, you know, I mean, one of the things that's really pissed me off this season is the fact that our crowds have been slagged off because there's only 45,000 there and all that kind of thing. And you think, are you kidding me on here? Like, you know,
any other team in Britain would die for that.
Of course they would. Of course they would. You know, and. That we know we'll fill our stadium if you're playing regular Champions League football. Yeah. Now you could argue that, oh well, the SPL comes, you know, on our islands. No, what the SPL comes is a breeding ground for your young players to go and get the experience they need to then be the next guys that jump into the Champions League. So that every penny you're making for the Champions League doesn't need to be invested in top players because you've got a conveyor belt of players who are ready to step up, and they're surrounded by players who are playing the Champions League, and they look at them in the dressing room and they say, "That's who I want to be. I want to be that guy." I mean, Christ almighty, take Chris Commons for an example. Pissing about at Derby and Nottingham Forest and all that his career. All of a sudden, he's in the Champions League playing in the most watched match in the whole tournament and things like that.
Scores the goal that puts Celtic into the last 16.
And now you look at him now in the interviews he does, and you think he's actually starting to get it.
Yeah, he gets it, and his his family is entrenched with it, and you could. It's the type of scenario. You know, I remember hearing maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago a quote from Robin van Persie where he said something to the effect of, "Well, I'd like to finish my career at Manchester United." It's like, yeah, I'll bet you would, but if you stop scoring goals, Alex Ferguson's going to sell your ass to whoever will pay for you. But and it started to have me think about, you know, how rare that is that players, you know, in sort of the instant gratification society we live in, how rare it is that players like a Giggs or you know, Scholes spend so much time at the same club or finish their careers at a particular club. There's a couple players though in this Celtic side, you know, Chris Commons being one of them, who I could see, you know, them staying for the rest of their careers. I mean, really so much because their value to us and to stay with us, in addition to the fact that they love playing for Celtic, they're settled and you know, sort of the external issues, but their value to us on the pitch far exceeds what another club would be willing to pay for them. And as such, it doesn't make sense to sell them.
Well, I mean, take today for an example. I asked Simon Donnelly, why did you go with a back three, right? Because to me, as soon as I seen that, I thought, that's suicide, right? And he basically said, well, you know, they've got so many defenders injured right now. They played a back three last week. It was reasonable. They got a win at Inverness. They rode their luck a wee bit, but they got the win. And they went with it again. And I kind of says to him, you know, no offence, but, you know, I thought it was a suicide mission. And he went, no, picking a back three wasn't a suicide mission. What was a suicide mission was giving away free kicks that then Chris Commons could wreak havoc with. That's what the suicide mission was. You know, because in a back three, what you're telling your three centre-halves is, do not give away stupid free kicks around the box. You know, we've only got 3 defenders here.
Well, so and you saw what happened with Mark Miller. I mean, you know, Jackie just absolutely lost it.
Oh well, I mean, Mark Miller is a guy that has got an immense amount of talent, but he's not got a brain in his head.
Yeah.
I mean, he's so temperamental and stuff like that. It's interesting, but you see, so what happens in that scenario is you've got centre halves diving into tackles, giving away free kicks, giving up potential bookends, and you've only got 3 defenders at the best of it. So right away you're kind of like, on a hide into nothing basically. But Chris Commons, I think, he's now shrewd enough to realise that, as I say, he's been, lingering about the Championship and stuff like that. And suddenly he comes to Celtic, and as you say, his wife embraced it all and stuff like that, the phenomenal charity work she's done and stuff like that. As Commons done an interview during the week there where he basically said, in the past, when he was playing at Championship clubs, he would basically take, have 6 weeks off, spend the entire time on holiday, book 2 or 3 holidays within that time, and all he would do was sit on beaches, drinking and eating the entire time. And he said the reason that he's not doing that now is because he doesn't want to sit on the bench next season. Yeah. He realises that he has to be at that level the minute he's day one of pre-season.
That's exactly what we want.
Because, I mean, it wasn't even that long ago that players would come back a stone overweight.
Yeah. And it would take that time to get all that weight off, and it that must be murder. I mean, the first week of training after that, it must be just absolutely dreadful.
Oh God, I mean, definitely. I mean, it's the only guy I ever spoke to about that I can recall was Brian McClare, and I asked him about pre-season, and he just said one word: hell.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be.
Because there was no. Like our players after the cup final, we were going away with diet plans and nutritionist information and set fitness regimes that they'll need to do on their holidays, because they know when they come back to pre-season they have to be bang on it for day one. Because if they're no, there's plenty of guys right behind them that are willing to take their place, who did adhere to it and did be professional, and they're the guys, and you see it all the time. Guys emerged for pre-season and look world beaters because they were the ones that took the opportunity to say, well, I'm not going to let my fitness level drop,
right,
or my professionalism drop, and all that kind of thing. And at a big Champions League club like Celtic, that should be a prerequisite.
No question. And it's almost a blessing in disguise. I mean, we can look at the liability of such important games being so early, but it actually can be a blessing where like we're discussing right now. I mean, a player like Chris Commons, who I mean, he has come in. I think he's maybe played a half a season of stone overweight. But he realizes the importance of not just that shrinking window, as it were, in terms of the layoff, but the importance of being ready to go. Once things kick back off, because I mean it's going to be. I mean, what are they going to have? 3 weeks, 4 weeks, before they get back? I mean, our first round of qualifiers are 3rd week of July, I believe. So it's
I think they go back something like the 20th of June. So 3 weeks, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's keeping them honest if we're sort of analyzing it from a glass half full perspective. You're not going to have Gary Hooper. Well, you're not going to have Gary Hooper, but you're not going to have players fucking off to Miami or wherever and just saying, all right, well, I'll get myself sorted out when we get back. It's not going to be like that. You have to look after yourself and hopefully that mindset stays sharp as well, because that needs time to bed in to get up and firing. But hopefully that sort of mentality can persist, because it is absolutely vital that we come out with a vengeance early. Yeah. But a couple of things that became present for me out of this conversation here. First off, what the Huns tried to do to us throughout the 90s has actually happened to them, and we didn't even have to try anything to happen. I mean, they wanted to eliminate us, and they came damn close to doing it. It didn't happen. They've been eliminated, and now we have the luxury that they were always looking to have. The points that you brought up about using domestic ties, especially the early round cup ties and things of that nature, to bed in some of these younger players, develop them, foster competition, and then sort of raise all boats, to use that analogy that I just mangled. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about is Neil Lennon and sort of the task that's in front of him. I mean, as we've described here, it is not going to be easy. There's going to be 3 rounds of qualifiers. It's starting early on. We talked about, what his legacy, not just what his legacy is, but what his legacy may be in comparison to, obviously it's impossible to compare anybody to Alex Ferguson considering what he's done over the period of time that he's been able to do it. But in situations like what's coming up this summer, like, having a quick turnaround and going up against some of these Scandinavian teams and being right up against it in spite of the fact that we made it to the last 16, having to go through all this rigmarole to get back to the group stages. These are the type of scenarios that greatness is sort of formed out of. These are the type of things. I mean, Alex Ferguson, time and time again would go up against challenges. He fended off, the advances of the Walkers at Blackburn. He fended off consistently Abramovich at Chelsea. He fended off Arsene Wenger time and time again. And obviously he had a huge chunk of change to work with himself. But, when you talk about the level of talent that he brought through, you talk about the treble in 99 that really, in my opinion, they had no business winning, but they found a way to do it. He's met these challenging situations. I mean, look at what this United team is known for, what he's known for, the last minute thing, Fergie time. This is a club that, quite often would be up against it and they'd figure out a way to pull it out. And this is the sort of thing that's present in front of Neil Lennon. We know Neil Lennon's a winner. He's proven that he's a winner. He's, we've won 2 leagues on the bounce, and now it's time to, sort of get off of this plateau and raise the greatness quotient, if you will. That and that's all if he indeed does continue as the Celtic manager. If I gave you £10 right now and you have to bet whether or not Neil Lennon, yes or no, is going to be manager on July whatever it is, July 20th, when that first Champions League qualifier is, where are you putting the money?
It's a good question.
I'm putting you on the spot there. I know it, but I want to follow up with this with my own thoughts as well.
And it's I don't know. I think he'll be there because I think that when he reaches into his heart, he'll realise that this is a place he wants to be. That's in a football context. I mean, extend the point. If you look at somebody like Alex Ferguson, I always think really the definition of winners are people who get beat and come back and still win. And that's exactly what Alex Ferguson has done time and time and time again. We now know that his preparation for this season started 5 minutes after the final whistle of last season, where he told these players that we lost the league on goal difference. That's never going to happen again. So what did they do? We were the top scorer in the English Premier League, and they win the league at a canter, and they scored more goals than anybody. That's the kind of drive and determination I think Neil Lennon's got. I mean, you look at it, you mentioned the challenges that Ferguson faced, the first, once he started winning the leagues. I mean, the first one was Blackburn with all their millions and Shearer and all that kind of thing. He took them apart. Then Arsenal with half the French World Cup winning team, he took them apart. Chelsea with Mourinho and all that kind of thing, he took them apart. And then Man City with their billions, he took them apart. And, I'm sure there was plenty bars in Liverpool and London and all that were delighted when Alex Ferguson left Man United.
Especially on the heels of Maggie dying.
Well, and similarly, I think there would be plenty bars in Scotland fully Huns who would be absolutely delighted to see Neil Lennon leave that club.
True.
Because this is a guy who came in as a player, had said right from the get-go that he'd watched Celtic Rangers games where we were bullied off the park, that wasn't going to happen on his watch. Highly successful player, won numerous league titles, leaves, comes back as coach, we win the league in the last game of the season, the devil in their eyes is back again. And then when we have a couple of fallow seasons, the last season under Strachan and the one under Tony Mowbray, who comes back? Neil Lennon, 2 in a row, should have been 3 in a row, as we all know. Yep. And they must just think, is this guy ever going to go? Because they know and we know that if whatever we're feeling as fans after a defeat or a disastrous game or whatever, Neil Lennon feels exactly the same. Because he understands it as well as we do. And I'm always a fan of having a guy like that around the football club, because Celtic is a massive club, and I hate when you bring it. I mean, there's been players that came into that club who were fantastic players that just could not handle it. Harold Bratback was a perfect example of that. This is a guy who was scoring goals in the Champions League left, right and centre. Real Madrid against Real Madrid and all that kind of thing. And then he came into Celtic, and the first person he met at the airport says, "You realise you have to win the league this season." You know, and this went on for weeks. Everybody kept saying, "You have to win the league this season." And he said to Tosh McKinley, Tosh, everybody keeps saying to me, "We have to win the league, like they're going to kill me if we don't." And Tosh said to him, "That's because we do." You know, and that's what it's like at Celtic. You've got to win every game. That would be the first thing as a manager or as a director I would say to an incoming manager or player. You do realise you have to win every game. Mm-hmm. That's the standard we expect at this football club. Now we realise we can't win every game, but we expect you to die trying. You know, and that's basically it. And as we've mentioned in the past, a lot of players have come for a big pay packet at the end of their career and kind of try to float through games and all that kind of thing. I want to see young, hungry Celtic men on that park going out and trying to play the Celtic way and trying to win as many football matches and trophies as possible, forget the money, so that in 30 and 40 years' time, as we've spoke about, Murdoch, Alden, Hay and all that as the songs sing, that we'll be mentioning their names. Because somebody like Bobby Murdoch would never have made enough money to retire on.
Right. But
somebody like Bobby Murdoch was placed on a level like God amongst the Celtic support, would never have had to have bought a drink in his life in any kind of Celtic environment, and had a respect by the Celtic supporters that went on even after his death, because he was a Celtic man, he played in a great Celtic team, and he went out every week to fight for that jersey. And that's all we ask. Mm-hmm. You know, that is all we ask as supporters, and that's why you have, World War III on Twitter when we get beat up. Because, people just want to win, and that's it, and that's what we want. And there's a difference between getting beat and getting beat where you could have done better. Mm. And that's all we ask. We just want you to go out there and kind of give everything for that jersey. And, as Jokestein himself said, that jersey doesn't shrink for inferior players. We all know that. And I like to always think of that Celtic jersey as the way Billy McNeil wore it.
Yep.
And Billy McNeil used to look like he was about 10 foot tall when he wore that jersey. And his chest would expand when he pulled that jersey on. And that should be the feeling that every player that pulls that jersey on should have.
No question about it. And a couple of points. The one thing that you bring up about, every bar full of Huns in Scotland being, happy at the news of Neil Lennon resigning or leaving. It must be a nightmare for them, knowing that, not just, fine, you can say Gordon Strachan, he's one of us and he gets it and all that, or Tony Mowbray played for us and he gets it, or even Martin O'Neill, he spent time, he knows what it means, blah, blah, blah. But Neil Lennon is one of us. He's always been one of us. He gets sent off at Ibrox and he spits in the scarf. I mean, come on. He's doing exactly what every single one of us is doing. It's in his blood, and it's a completely different thing. The thing that will always stick with me, for me, his legacy is a bit more complex. I mean, I expected something completely different when he was named caretaker manager than what we got. Because he had just, in spite of the fact that he was just sort of a workmanlike midfielder, just never really put a foot wrong, just sort of a steady hand, for all those things that I just described. The passion, the enthusiasm, the emotion. My lasting memory, and if this is going to be his last game next week, when he took over, not just as caretaker manager, but it did start there, but also that first season. This team and this club, to a certain extent, lost its identity. It lost any sort of identity, especially the team. We're talking about the Joss Hoyvelds, the Morten Rasmussen, Robbie Keane coming in, for 6 months, and I don't know where I'm going to land. All that. It was like it was listless. And Neil Lennon came in and he said, right, I want these players to go to war every time they go on this park, and the players that he brought in and how he put them together, I really feel like there's an identity to this team just now, and that's permeated through the club. The enthusiasm of the supporters, the rise of the Green Brigade, all of these things are sort of symbiotic, and they were put in place by Neil Lennon coming through and doing it in a very thoughtful way. I was not expecting Neil Lennon to be sort of the tactician that he's been. Yeah. To have sort of the aptitude to go up against the top managers in Europe, and going up against the top sides in Europe, and potentially one of the top sides ever. And over two rounds, just not looking out of place whatsoever. That's going to be the thing that lasts with me. It's not so much, but to a certain extent, you can't ignore the fact that, he's had his life in jeopardy this entire time. And he's been at loggerheads against the SFA and the establishment the entire time. Yeah. But, what he's done with for this club, the individual result here and there, withstanding, what he's done has been, just nothing short of phenomenal. So if he were to leave now, that would be, it would be bringing Celtic back to their true and rightful place, which is, as you've described it, a European power.
Yeah, I mean, it would take you back to April 2010 when we lost to Ross County. There was a video on YouTube not long after that of fans berating the players at Celtic Park as they came back in the bus and screaming and shouting and giving some, horrific abuse to some of the players and stuff. Within a year, there were 60,000 fans doing the huddle at Celtic Park having lost the league.
Exactly.
And that is exactly what Neil Lennon brought to that football club.
Yeah.
He gave people a cause to unite behind. And that is when Celtic are at their most powerful as a fan base. If we're united, we're unstoppable. There's absolutely no question about that. And as Neil Lennon said that day against Motherwell, it's not the end, it's just the beginning. And he was proved right on that.
Yep.
And it's easy to kind of, pick out flaws and pick out games that were crap and all that kind of thing.
It's so easy, I could do it.
Yeah, you do it regularly.
Sure.
But the big picture is that, the progress has been made. No question about that. We want it to be continued to be made. As fans, we expect a certain standard, and Neil Lennon expects that standard also. And that, the games that were crap towards the end of the season, like Motherwell and Ross County and stuff like that, will be banished by a Scottish Cup win next week.
No question.
And nobody will care about that. And people will say, right, that's fine and all that kind of thing.
Exactly right.
But as fans, we have the right to be critical as long as it's constructive, because we care. We really care. This is our life. It's no a hobby that we're all going to switch off from in the summer and things like that. This is our life. This is how we live every single day, thinking about Celtic, talking about Celtic, writing about Celtic, whatever way it is. This is how we are defined. When people, whoever they are in the world, see a Celtic result, they define it by the people that they know who support Celtic.
Exactly.
So if you come to Scotland and we get beat up at Juventus 3-0, your friends in America who know how mad you are about it are like, Graham Wilson go 3-0 for Juventus. And that's, and we're happy to have that, but that's how it is. And, and these times are hard when that kind of thing comes along and stuff. But we're lucky in the respect that we could have another golden day next Sunday. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, excuse me, when we lifted that trophy last week, we should never ever take that for granted.
No.
Because it was never always like that, we went through a horrific period in the 90s and stuff like that.
No, and that was an important conversation for me, because I didn't experience that, and to a certain extent, I became aware that, I'm getting to that place, where I take the trophies for granted and just keep it in the sort of unilateral context of, right, well, this team is, this is a special team. It's grown together. There's such a nucleus. Look what happened in Europe. This is minimum expectation. But, to your point, it's very important not to lose the perspective of just how important it is and how much it means.
Yeah, because let's make no bones about it. When we didn't win a league, it's fucking awful.
Yeah.
Oh,
God.
And it's horrible having to sit through celebrations, the other teams and stuff like that. And that's the thing that should drive you on to never let that happen again.
Yep, no question.
And, as I said, now we're in a position where we have, the fans are already singing about 10 in a row. The Green Brigade had a banner up at the last St Johnstone game that said May 98, we stopped 10 in a row, May 2013, we're on our way to 10 in a row. Now, I'll tell you right now, if we do win 10 in a row, or we really go for 10 in a row, only about 70% of that's the players. The other 30% comes for the fans. It comes for no taking game for granted. It comes for no turning up because you expect us to win anyway. And it comes for us driving on the players and the team and making them aware of the fact that this is what we want. This is the final thing. You know, if you could do this for us, then, you know, we'll never ever forget it. And it would just, you know, it would cement our position as the top team in Scottish football history if you were able to do that. Now, we already won 9 in a row. That's our record. You know, somebody equalled it through means that were completely dishonest and tainted. And we can have the best legacy ever as a Celtic team and a Celtic generation, which is to be part of a 10 in a row that was won, you know, without cheating, that was won completely fairly and honestly, and was won the Celtic way. And that should be the driving force for the next 8 years. That should be our number one aim, to get that record and completely cement us as the driving force in Scotland for the last 125, 135 years.
I couldn't have said it better. You know, and
I know.
It's very nice. And it's, you know, something else that just sort of came to me, you know, hearing you is, you know, this isn't just a growing experience for Neil Lennon or some of these younger players, but it's a growing experience in a very literal sense for many of us as supporters. Yeah. I mean, you know, putting myself in that sort of scenario, you know, and sort of describing the you know, the dose of reality by reading your blog and speaking to you last week is that, you know, how much did during, you know, their 9 in a row, how much did their mentality turn to that, right? We should just be expecting this. It's, you know, it's just minimum expectations. It's not that big of a deal, to the point where, you know, and I realize this goes into a much wider and broader sociological sort of examination, but, you know, it's something to be cognizant of, you know, that we need to grow in such a way that, you know, we appreciate and we continue to demand and you know, celebrate, you know, winning trophies and winning leagues, no matter how far ahead we are of these other sides. We want to stay engaged. We want to stay passionate, you know, so that we're always engaged with the club. Like you said, I mean, we as supporters are entitled to complain. You know, I mean, and as long as after we're proved wrong, we hold our hands up like I do and say that we're mugs, because I am a mug. But it's something that we feel on a daily basis. It's part of our emotion. When we feel like the players let us down, I mean, it's emotional, and you know, I mean, we're well within our rights to be angry about that, and that's good. The day that we have a problem is when that sort of thing happens and we just don't feel it anymore, because that's the sort of thing where, you know, we start to look the other way, we stop caring, and next thing you know, some guy in a taxi in Glasgow is crank calling the president of supporters clubs in America, and nobody owns any shares in the club.
Well, I mean, to your point, I think it's like, you know, Kenny Dalglish always said, "You show me a good loser, and I'll show you a loser." You know,
yeah,
and that is something that I think engulfed our club throughout the 90s, where the mentality came around of, well, we might have lost the league, but we're better people than them. Fine, but that's not winning us any trophies. So you have to get a bit more nastier on the park, certainly. I think Rangers 9 in a row, excuse me, was kind of, you know, as well as it being tainted, it was tainted by triumphalism. And they could not wait to rub your nose in it, and constantly, you know, any opportunity they could have to dig at Celtic, they would take it and all that kind of thing. And I think that when we do that to them, you know, previously and to Sevco now, then it's done with a wee bit of class. You know, I think it's important that, you know, in the mid-state, winning the league last week and possibly winning a double next week, you know, yesterday there was a plaque unveiled for the Celtics for Change group.
Yes.
So whilst we're loving the fact that we're winning trophies now, we're looking back and saying, you know, well, let's not forget that these guys organised a campaign that enabled the fans to get behind, you know, genuine leadership that was a huge part in saving our club and making the team that we have now win these trophies. Because without that, who knows what would have happened? You know, you just never know. And it was great to see them getting that kind of appreciation and recognition, because, you know, to go back to the times, I mean, there was a genuine sort of feeling at the time in Celtic, and I certainly had it, you know, certainly getting into 93 and stuff like that, it was like, are we ever actually going to be a force again?
Yeah, it's
You
unthinkable.
know, because there's only so, because the first couple of years you're sort of like, well, Celtic though, we'll come back, and all of a sudden you kind of realise, actually, you know what, the gap's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the guys kind of hard work and determination not to let that happen, added to Fergus's money and determination to run the club properly, and we our knowledge of the fact that if you get this thing up and running, they'll come back. It was a pure field of dreams moment, It was a definite, if you build it, they will come. And that's exactly what Fergus did with that stand. And you've seen it yourself when you've seen Celtic Park. And I mean, there's the monument to Fergus right there.
Absolutely.
This phenomenal stadium. And, the last factor of that, of course, was the great Tommy Burns, who started the modern day Celtic football. We'd had 5 years of absolute pish. Tommy came in, had a horrific first season because he had so much to try and fix.
Right.
And then the next season we ended up losing the league by only losing one game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, we could go into the reasons why that happened and all, but Tommy Burns started the modern day Celtic on the pitch. No question about that. And, if I could have had anything in life at all, I'd like to have seen Tommy be the guy that eventually stopped them beating our 9-0 record. No disrespect to Wim Jansen and coming done a fantastic job, but that just shows you what Tommy Burns means to people at Celtic and to people, that anybody who knows Celtic, is that Tommy never done that, and yet he is still regarded as one of the greatest figures that the club ever produced.
Oh, no question about it. And to this day, I mean, with Lennoxtown.
Yeah.
His legacy is Tony Watt. His legacy is, to a certain extent, Aidan McGeady coming through, Atajic, all these young players, James Forrest, that are coming through the Lennoxtown Academy. You can directly relate or trace back the effect that had to Tommy Burns. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. It's, one thing you always hear about Tommy Burns was he was a fiery redhead. Because he was a guy who could get sent off and he would, be going absolutely crazy in games. That was not a day with what his hair was like. That's because he's absolutely loved Celtic Football Club.
Right. I mean, you read about, the sort of person that he was off the pitch. I mean, he went to church every day. He was just so involved in the community. And just the sort of person that he was, he would just do anything to help anybody. We talk about exceptional human beings and when you talk about Tommy Burns, you realize just how overused that term is.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about losing the identity a few years ago. That timeline when we lost Tommy.
Yeah.
And for 2 years, we never had that.
Yeah.
Because Tommy was that identity. He gave you that identity. You knew that Tommy was in that club, and you knew that everything was being done to make Celtic Football Club successful. And because Tommy was just Celtic through and through, obviously. And then we bring in Neil, who's of the same ilk.
Mm-hmm.
And you need that at a club like Celtic. You need that. There's certain clubs that need the kind of people at their club. Liverpool's another one. They just lost one today, Jamie Carragher. Guys like him and Gerrard, they're not going to accept players like that coming in and not being 100%. And that in clubs like that, because Celtic are a bit like Liverpool, where they kind of, they're like sort of seen upon in their respective league as somehow, second class, and probably Everton as well. I mean, when you look at the dominance of Liverpool and Everton in the 80s, I know Scousers that would tell me that, when they were always at Wembley for cup finals, they had to put on London accents to book hotel rooms because nobody would take them, and so you kind of need the guys in there to remind you what you're up against and what your common enemy is, and as Tommy Burns called it, the cause.
Yeah.
And the famous Tommy Burns interview when we won the double in '88, and Jim White asked him, Tommy, what does it mean? And he just said, that's what it means, and he pointed to support.
Yep.
Because Tommy said after every single game he was a manager, the supporters are what we do everything for. And that's something you need at a club like Celtic, because the supporters are so important to it. Because, as Robert Kelly said in 1962, we are more than a football club. And the reason we're more than a football club is because we are the life. Celtic Football Club is a life for all the people that go to the games and go to the bars to watch it and watch it online and all that kind of thing. It's a life. It's what defines them. It gives them their identity. And, we have constant things about, we're an Irish club, we're a Scottish club, and we're kind of in the middle of it, Celtic is our identity and Celtic Park is our mecca. And if you've got guys in that football club that understand that, you will get success.
Yep. and may the power brokers within Carradale Street never forget that. Because
absolutely
that's
because
sad.
Especially as well, as like to say is that we're in an age right now where football fans and Celtic fans in particular are getting demonised.
Yeah.
And see the people at dairy kind of things, the politicians and the suits and all that. I couldn't give a monkey's fuck about what they think about me, right? Or any supporter. I could not care less. Because I'll tell you, as long as there's people like Anne Williams who lost her life recently, who campaigned for 24 years for justice for her son who died at Hillsborough and died getting that justice, then these people should shudder at ever demonising football supporters, because Anne Williams is the embodiment of what real football supporters are all about.
Very well said. Very well said, Paul. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm not. We still have a little bit left. I want to follow up with you on a couple of things, but I know that I speak for all the listeners when whenever you come on. I mean, I could talk to you all day, and it's always we really appreciate your insight, your passion, your intellect. It's always a treat. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with you. The latest with the Green and White Rider. First off, how's the Last Pearl Diver? How are things going with that? The sales and you're like the band that continually reinvents itself and stays relevant, and with that it translates into longevity. You were talking a little bit about going a bit of a different way, maybe spending some time to sort of evolve that between books this time. How's that going? What are some of the latest projects that you're working on, and what are your thoughts there? What's the latest?
Well, I mean, one of the things the one thing I get stuck about all the time is another book, and stuff like that. And I was listening to an interview with a couple of guys who were. It was a thing that was in America, and they were getting interviewed by Martin Scorsese, and these were these two young directors who were making films all the time. And Scorsese said something that really related to me, where he said, "Oh, you guys aren't waiting on anybody," And I kind of thought, yeah, you know what? I didn't see why I should have to wait on anybody just because somebody's like, oh God, you brought another book out, Yeah. So that's kind of how I've been thinking. I just finished a project which was a kind of thing for the Food Bank for New York, which is an organisation that I'd kind of worked with in New York, in the sense that I volunteered on Christmas Day 2007, I think it was, to kind of be on one of their outreach projects where it was serving people food and getting food to people on Christmas Day that were kind of on the streets and stuff, and kind of kept in touch with the people who worked there, as in no in terms of the people who run the place, but the people who were volunteering, because I was kind of inspired by them in the sense that one of the reasons that I'd done it on that time is I was going to be spending Christmas alone anyway. So I've never really been a Christmas person anyway. I thought, well, let's see if I can try and do something. And it's something I'd done in Edinburgh and that in the past as well. And then they'd got in touch with me, recently I was talking, and they were saying they were going to do some trek somewhere, and somebody else was going to climb a mountain, and kind of hinting that, would you like to do something? And I was like, well, I'm fucking not climbing a mountain, that's for sure. So I was like, and a bit of drunken bravado was like, I'll write some, great writer, I'll be brilliant. And then sort of, they were like, so you're going to have it out for the summer, like the start of June or whatever. And I was kind of like, all right, okay. And I'm like, fuck. So ended up writing a short story, which ended up being like 23,000 words. And thought about it and thought, right, it's called When You Yank a Metropolitan, and it's about a Mets fan who comes to Sunnyside in New York. And first of all,
I hate it already.
Say again?
I hate it already.
So I didn't even know you like baseball. But first of all, it's the way I write stuff is I never really sit down and go, right, this is exactly what I'm going to write. This will be the start, the middle, and the end. I just kind of make it up as I go along. I really do. I'll have the basis of an idea, and then whatever way my mind's feeling at that day. To the point where at one point in this book I was, I'm pontificating in the book about what it would be like if Telly Savalas played Ross and Friends. And that was on the basis of finding out that Telly Savalas, A, came from Garden City, which is a part of the book, which is in Long Island, which is where the Immigration/Green Card Centre is, and B, finding out that he was Jennifer Aniston's godfather. So, just let's take it in that direction.
Who loves you, baby? I'm a dinosaur doctor.
Yeah. So, and it was funny. It's just so funny researching that as well, because obviously Telly Savalas comes from a Greek family,
Right.
and everybody knows what Telly Savalas looks like. Same hairdresser as me, Mother Nature. And I looked at photos of his family. None of them look anything like him at all. And it's kind of weird, because they're all like really good-looking Greek guys with long flowing hair and all that.
There's just
and then
one.
here's Telly when they here, and he's like the multi-millionaire. He's slept through the whole of America basically. So there's the breaks for you. But the point is that this is a story. It's about a Mets fan. It's based in the week of between June 1st and June 8th in 2012. Any Met fan listening will know that June 1st, 2012 was the night that Yohan Santana done the no-hitter for the Mets, which was the first one, I think, in 8,020 games in their entire history.
Yeah.
Based around that, yeah. And but I think what people will say when they read this story, or if they read this story, is that they'll think, oh yeah, I know, it's another kind of typical sort of Paul Larkin book, gratuitous and things like that. And then I've taken it in a completely different direction that I think that nobody will actually have thought of. But in effect, what the book is A, to try and make any money I can for the Food Bank for New York, but B, it's my tribute to Frankie Fraser.
Fantastic.
Because Frankie Fraser, as well as being instrumental in some of the background to the book, with names and locations and certain incidents in Met history and stuff like that, was that I was coming towards the end of the story and I was thinking, how am I going to finish this? And something that Frankie did was, in the past, was the kind of inspiration where I kind of run it by him first. I said, you're going to be the inspiration for this book in terms of the ending especially. And he's like, oh God, what is it like? And I was like, well, it's something you've done. And I told him what it is. He's like, oh Jesus Christ. And then he just started laughing. And basically what it was there was a bar in New York called Nevada Smith's, which at the time was the bar that all the English Premiership fans went to watch their games, all the different clubs and stuff.
Huge.
And was also the bar where the US national team's supporters in New York went to watch the US games.
Right.
And that all got stopped. And this is another reason why I love Frankie. That all got stopped because there was an England game on one time, and because there was England fans in, they took the Irish tricolour down. Yeah. Frankie heard about it, and that was the last time they ever visited the bar. So I thought that was absolutely brilliant. But the thing that happened this time was that there was a few Celtic fans in, and they were sitting drinking, and a Leeds fan was in, blah, blah, blah. He started giving the Celtic fans abuse. You can imagine the kind of abuse. He was a kind of right-wing Leeds fan.
Of course. And
Frankie walked in, asked the guys what was up, and they told him, and he just walked straight over the guy and knocked him spark out. And, I know people, violence is never the answer, etc., 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 but it was something poetic about it. Because this guy, Frankie's not the biggest guy in the world by any stretch of your imagination, but he's a fucking pit bull,
I'm not messing with him.
And, he's the kind of guy I love because, what you see is what you get, If Frankie had $100 in his pocket, he'd give you 50. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of guy he is, and I thought,
definitely.
He's so nice to me when I was, he's such a, how can I put it, he's like he's the sort of guy you never see coming, Nobody would think, oh, he's a threat or that kind of thing. But and it's not just about violence or stuff like that. It's when I got married in New York and he was at the reception, by the end of the night he was body popping on the dance floor. And I'm telling you right now, fucking LL Cool J and that would have been hard to have kept up with him. He was absolutely brilliant. You know what I mean? And I thought, you know what, Frankie was so nice to me when I was in New York, and I had so many great times with him and stuff like that. And one of the best memories with Frankie was playing football at Sunnyside Park, and it was about 120 degree fucking heat, and I was kind of at him all week saying, "Are you seriously going to play this game?" "Oh yeah, it'll be fine. Like, oh my God, it's Frankie like me. We're not exactly athletes, shall we say, and we played against these American guys who were athletes, and were kind of looking at us in the team going, Jesus Christ, look at the state of these two fucking bit, And so game starts, ball gets laid back to Frankie in the centre half. And by the way, Frankie's wearing two knee pad things because his knees are fucked. Frankie picks the ball up, just glides past the first forward, launches a ball right over the top of the centre half seed. I connect with it perfectly, hits the post and goes in. And we just walked over to each other as if we'd done that every day of the week. You know? And it was just one of the moments. But now this story, it gets dark, it gets deep. Obviously, there's black humour, black comedy laced throughout it. And despite what people might think, you know, with me being a Yankee fan, I'm not coming at it from an angle of slagging the Mets, you know, because there is slagging of the Mets for other characters in the book.
All right.
But I think Frankie and my other friend Gary Haley gave me a real understanding of what a Met fan is and what it's like to be a Met fan, added to the Mets boys episodes I'd listened to and stuff like that, and you know, and then Nicky LaVeglia and then obviously Harper, Jason, people like that. Mm-hmm. I've tried to come at it with a different sort of angle, and I hope that people kind of look at this and sort of think, you know, I can sort of do something different, because I'm pretty proud of what I've done with it, you know.
With good reason.
And you know, I'm hoping that people, you know, it's only going to be on Kindle and iPad. It's not going to be like a full book or anything like that. I don't think it's justified just for 23,000 words. Mm-hmm. So there's that, and then after that, I'm doing, it's almost finished actually, a new band pop book which will be out in the autumn, which is you know, going to have a lot of your old favourites in it. It's going to have, you know, we're going to have a new update from our refereeing contact, which is really, really good. I know that people loved that the first time. We've got something to a completely different angle, but related to the same kind of Masonic hold that these people had on society. We're going to be looking at a lot of David Murray stuff, and trying to open up a few stories that people might have heard about David Murray, and trying to expand them more and enlighten people and stuff like that. We're going to be looking at the cheating that went on, you know, for the last 10 years, and use kind of my perspective on it and insights and stuff. And there'll be loads of the usual, you know, drunken debauchery stories and, you know, New York stories, which people seem to love. And there's a brand new story from Vegas and stuff like that, which I know never paints me in a good light, but, you know, at least they're true. And then there's a few great stories for people like Lorenzo Wordsmith, Brogan Trevino, Sam McLeod,
very nice.
You know, people like that, just, you know, putting their stuff and stuff like that. And then we're finishing that in the next couple of weeks, and then I'll be writing the sequel to The Last Pearl Diver, which will be out, you know, this time next year. And that will be it for a while, because to your point, that, you know, I think there's only so much stuff you can write before you have to actually go and live again, you know, and sort of experience stuff again and stuff like that. So that's kind of mapped to. I mean, there's a few other things. There'll be a few other things, like I'm writing the forward for the new Playing for the Lost Boys book, which will be out right after the Cup final, which are fantastic, you know, because I grew up on the Playing for Celtic books and stuff like that. So when their demise, it was kind of like, oh fuck, and then, you know, the Lost Boys came along and started it on again. I think it's fantastic. And then, you know, personally, I'm just about to start exams for college, which I'm pretty confident about, you know, but obviously need keep focused on and stuff like that. And then after that, probably moving to Washington DC to be with you, Graham.
Fantastic. Well, listen, you know, it must get tiresome running from, you know, all of the adoring women. So, you know, we need.
Can't run, so.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well, you know, I mean, transportation, finding, you know, alternative sources of transportation. You know, motorbikes, regular bikes, skateboards. You know, I mean, anything you get your hands on. If we take you into a different sort of environment, at least you can get, you know, a bit of a break from it. So, I'm sure that you know, that bit of rest from all the adoration would do you some good. But
aye.
Fantastic stuff.
I mean, I don't know. It's like, you know, there's a lot of one of the things that happens with me quite a lot is I get asked about, you know, how do you write a book and how do you bring it out and this, that, and next thing and stuff like that. And sort of, you know, it's good to see people kind of actually stepping forward and trying to take things on in different directions. I mean, you've got, you know, Brogan Trevino.
Excellent.
Just done the Wally Wallace book.
Yeah, excellent stuff.
The Celtic anthology that's kind of gone about with old Pesky and Lorenzo and Brogan again and stuff, and trying to get stories and all that kind of thing. And that's kind of, I love that kind of stuff, because I don't think there's another support in the world that creates so much. You know, not just with the books, but with the podcasts and all that kind of thing. And it's great to see, A, that kind of thing rising up, and B, with no reliance on the kind of established things. You know, no reliance on the media or publishers or stuff like that we're going out and doing it ourselves. And, you know, there's tons of guys writing new blogs and all that kind of thing. And
I think to a certain extent, we might be one of the only clubs in the world that is so underserved as we are, because, you know, these media have been drawn out of, you know, being shit on for so long, for having to deal with the bigotry and the bias and the arrogance and, you know, just coming up against us. You know, I mean, it gets to a breaking point where you say, you know what, we're gonna serve ourselves because we're not being served by, you know, the traditional. I don't think many, if any, other clubs have to put up with this. Certainly not to the same level.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways that we cope with that is by constantly evolving the stuff that we all do, you know?
Yeah.
You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again.
True.
Because, you know, eventually, I mean, in the same way, that's the kind of way I'm thinking, where I've, you know, got something in mind is after I've done the Bandpop book, you know, it's a much bigger, grander scale project. The next book launch will be different to the previous book launches, because I think that, you know, it's easy. People, but it's great and all that kind of thing. So yeah, fine, but we want to keep sort of just evolving it a wee bit more and stuff like that, and try and sort of stay ahead of the kind of mainstream media and all that kind of stuff. Because, you know, if you look at, if you look at like Radio Scotland and stuff like that, you know, every week it's kind of like all you get on it is journalists coming on and dismissing everything, and they dismiss everything because they're so far behind everything that they can't even reach out to grab it anywhere.
Right.
You know, you look at the stuff that's been coming out with Sebco and all that kind of thing, and it's just it's kind of beyond belief that hasn't made the mainstream media.
Well, I mean,
you know?
and they don't have, you know, the original ideas. You know, I mean, they never had the wherewithal in the first place, but it was just the fact that was the only source that we could get, you know, this type of thing. So they never had to innovate. They never had to rely on, you know, any sort of intuition or aptitude. You know, and now all of a sudden they need that in order to be able to compete, and they don't have it. You know, so what do? They, you know, as is the sort of human nature, the typical reaction is to try and rubbish, you know, whoever it is that's making a mug out of you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the other thing I think it is with Celtic supporters is, you know, I've said it a million times, that we never expect help from anybody.
Right.
And, you know, by and large, the Celtic support has rebel hearts, you know?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you know, one of the reasons why Rangers died last summer is because they just sat on their arse and done nothing about it. And the same thing's happening at Hearts right now, you know? I mean, I know Hearts supporters are like, why are you not at your club breaking down the door? You know, I mean, at what point do you not realise you're finished? You know, the only thing that's got in your favour right now is time. You know, it's just a matter of time that's stopping you. And, you know, that never happened with Celtic. It never even happened with Hibs. You know, they rallied round, they saved their club. Celtic fans rallied round, saved their club. And it's because of the kind of mindset that we have of being rebels, of being outside the establishment, of being the type of people who say, you know, well, let's just wait and see what happens, you know, which seems to be the conceptual byword these days.
Well, because they've never had the fight.
Exactly. And that's it. And I think that, to your point about the kind of creative stuff as well, is that's something that drives me, and I know it drives other people, is that, you know, being hungry is the reason, is the best way to go into trying to be creative, you know? I think the best form of creativity comes out of necessity. And, you know, certainly now I write books to, you know, I've done books for charity in the past, but now I write books to kind of, you know, survive, if you like, you know? And that kind of hunger's a bloody great driving force of writing words, let me tell you. So, similarly, like, the way the stuff that we come out, you see it coming for the heart. Because what I think happens is, like, you've got now, certainly in this country with politicians, people are doing a job, then they get a politics degree, and then they become an MP. And you're like, no, that's not what politics is about.
Yeah.
What politics should be about is, I'm sick of this, I've no other avenue, I'm going to stand for office.
Right.
And try and change it myself.
Right.
And
That's how things get done.
Exactly. And that's, I think, exactly what happens with the kind of online Celtic community, Like, you know, I didn't like the books I was reading in the official Celtic shop and all that because it was all sanitised, and I didn't think it was, you know, relative to your supporters of Celtic. I think people put themselves in the kind of Celtic mainstream media on the basis that they didn't like what they were reading in the papers and that, and were like, well, no, I'm going to write about it, and I'm going to find out about it, and all that kind of thing. I think certain people didn't like or felt that the club weren't doing enough to kind of, you know, like podcasts and stuff like that, and so, you know, went out and done it themselves, and like yourself, you know, you wanted to represent or try and represent the views of American Celtic supporters, but didn't think they were being done properly. That's why you done it, and I think that's the best way to go into stuff, is to have a kind of common cause and something burning inside you and saying, well, you know what, I'm going to try and do it. I'm not going to wait on anybody else to form my own opinion. I'll form it for myself, thank you very much. And, you know, you can see that, you know, right for the get-go with podcasts, where they were different, and they became like electronic fanzines, if you like, and then branched out and all that kind of thing, and to a point where it's such a powerful force through Heel Media, you know, through Tommy in Glasgow and Billy Nowell and stuff like that, where I would envisage, and I've nothing to back this up, that people at Celtic are saying there's no point in even us attempting to do this because these guys are doing it all so well.
Well, if they were in the first place, right now I'd be taking a nap, but apparently they have no interest in doing it, so.
Which, I mean, I find that incredible, to be honest, like, I really do. It's the same with Sefco, like, you know, they brought in James Traynor, right? Director of Communications, whatever the fuck.
It never stops being funny.
Exactly. Now, if they actually were serious about having a proper Director of Communications that wasn't just there because he knew where the bodies were buried and stuff like that, then they would have brought in a guy who was a social media whiz kid, you know, who could actually go on the attack on social media and create a healthy online presence for them.
Right.
Instead, they've got a dinosaur in there who goes around bullying people and has disappeared as soon as the shit has hit the fan. Mm-hmm. You know, and so and that's it. I mean, I get constantly inspired by seeing new people come along with different ideas and, you know, like Frank Rafters at Mealy's Boys and stuff like that, where, you know, it's like he's sitting down and he's writing this kind of niche book and he's taking his time with it and all that kind of thing and researching with it. And even off the offshoots of that, where he's taking people to Willie Mealy's grave and he's meeting the oldest living Celtic player and stuff like that.
Fantastic work.
These are fantastic because these are tangents that he probably never expected to be going on until he started writing the book. But then when he finds his kind of place and what he wants to do, and then suddenly that opens up to other people who then get enlightened by what he finds out and the stuff that goes on. You know, similarly with the Celtic graves and all that kind of thing. And it's kind of ironic because what Celtic Graves has actually done is bring these people back to life. You know? Because, you know, the people maybe, you know, the Charlie Shaws and that, people maybe forgot about or never even heard of, suddenly are at the forefront of people's minds because of the hard work that they do. You know, and with the Kano Foundation and all that kind of stuff, where they're kind of, at a time where football's really expensive and stuff, their attitude is, well, let's make an experience for the next generation. And the brilliant thing about the Kano Foundation is they will not see the benefits of that apart from on the match day for probably 10, 15 years. But I'll guarantee you, in 10, 15 years, there'll be people, 20, 25-year-olds, who will say, the first introduction I had to Celtic was the Kano Foundation.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's where their legacy will go, you know?
Exactly.
And similarly with the podcast and all that, I mean, you might have guys in America who know you, don't have any knowledge of football whatsoever, and then you give them their first introduction to Celtic. And if one of the guys turns around next time you see him, he's got a Celtic top on, your job's done.
Exactly. That's exactly that was exactly the intent, and one of the reasons, you know, why we started it up, and you know, nothing could make me, you know, feel as though it was all worthwhile. I mean, I feel as though it's worthwhile, you know, every time somebody says, right, you know, we really enjoy the show. I mean, that's what it's all about. But you know, that would be, you know, that's one of the aims and the goals. You know, it's all about it's all about the communal. You know, it's all about working for each other because, you know, we're not being served by the resources or the outlets that should be serving us. Yeah,
I mean, that's the same for me. Like if a guy in the street or a girl in the street comes up to me or a boot launch and says, "Oh, I really enjoyed that," that's the end game for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not interested in impressing somebody who writes a blog or does a podcast or anything like that, because they're all in the game and we all know how it works. I'm interested in reaching out to the people, you know, that are like me, who are kind of, you know, working class and kind of never really had many opportunities and kind of fighting their whole life. If somebody like that comes up to me and says, I love that stuff, then I'm like, fantastic, because you're exactly the person I'm writing it for.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And there are so many guys like that, you know, that are on Twitter and stuff like that, and come to my book launches and stuff, who come up and say these things, and that's what it's all about for me. You know, I'm not interested in any shape or form of trying to make a career and ended up fucking, you know, commentating with Paul Cuddihy on Celtic TV or any of that bullshit. You know, I'm not interested. Just not interested. I'll never be welcome with open arms at Celtic Park.
You couldn't say things like the next goal is going to be vital?
Or pointing out what my parents are in the stand and all this crap. I'm not interested in that, and I'm not interested in, you know, being in the mainstream media and, you know, this shit, and, you know, like, oh, I'll write a blog for this paper now and all that kind of, because or I'm on STV now, because all they're doing is doing their work for free.
Right.
You know? And I'm one of these people that's a bit like, we are the fans, you are the media. We are the fans, you are the club. And never the twain should meet. You know, we all should know our kind of positions. And so I'm not, like, you know, I'm not sort of writing books to, you know, fucking raise a profile that gets me a fucking, you know, Scottish sitcom with a wacky neighbour and, you know, all this, you know, nothing like that at all. My end game is the books, you know?
Right.
I'm not interested in doing you know, one project that might go on beyond that, but it'll be, you know, internal with people like yourself that I know and like, and, you know, as part of it. So I think that when you're doing that kind of stuff, as long as you don't lose sight of that stuff, that you remember the reason why you started doing it in the first place, you'll be absolutely fine. Yeah. It's when you start muddying the waters around yourself and suddenly start doing things that compromise stuff, you know. Because one of the things I always get, well, not always, but it's get asked quite often is, oh, could you help promote this and could you help promote that? And you say, oh, fine, you know, like charities and people doing work, of course, you know, send a tweet out, whatever, fine. Because that's kind of what they're looking for. But like one person asked me to help promote a guy, promote the book of a guy who was an ex-fucking policeman. And by the way, this was actually on the morning in the fucking Green Brigade being kettled, right? And I just looked at this fucking guy's biography on Twitter, and it had proud member of the police family. And as soon as I read that, I thought, get yourself to fuck, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll try and help anybody I can that wants to progress on and do their own thing and all that kind of thing. But there has to be a line, you know? I mean, how, you know, the way I look at that is, you know who my barometer is for that kind of thing? Paul Lee. I always think things like that. I think, what would Paul Lee think about that? Because Paul Lee is like one of these guys who is exactly like Frankie Fraser, written off instantly.
Yeah. Right?
But see, when you actually speak to the guy and converse with the man and all that kind of thing, you couldn't meet a nicer guy or a more helpful guy. I mean, I was struggling for I never got a ticket for the cup final for Celtic, and Paul Lee got in touch with me privately on Thursday saying, look, I think there could be tickets, blah, blah, blah. Are you looking for them? I said, no, thanks very much. I've actually got one, you know? So anybody who thinks, oh, aye, that Paul Lee, that's the kind of guy, that's the kind of Paul Lee that I know. Somebody who privately is trying to help you out, and then he's done that for me on numerous occasions. You know, I didn't even know at the last book launch, no, the one there, the one before that, as part of the buffet, he'd made all these phenomenal cakes. And people had been saying to me all the time about all these cakes, and I'm thinking, I didn't remember the parrot talking about cakes and stuff. It was probably about a month after that I found out that it was him that had done it.
Yeah.
But I tell you, I never found out that it was him that had done it because he was shouting out from the rooftops.
Exactly.
Far from it, you know what I mean? So that's my kind of audience. That's the people that I relate to. The guys on the street, the girls on the street who just, you know, go about their lives, and you know, they'll be the ones that will tell me you've written too many books or that book was shite or whatever, and then I'll, you know, act accordingly. That's my kind of ear, my critics. And I think that in a general sense, that as long as you remember A, why you're doing the thing you're doing, and B, who you're doing it for, you'll be fine.
No question. No question. It made me smile. I saw a tweet from Patty Brennan on on Twitter, who's running Big G's show, the Celtic Dreams, for the next couple of weeks while Big G is moving house, and he's got some things going on. But he sent out a tweet saying, he gave his dad a copy of The Last Pearl Diver, and you can imagine. I mean, everybody has a different relationship with their dad, but I'm picturing it's like, Dad, here, read this. It's like, what's this? And then he reads it, and he comes back and tells Patty, right, son, this is a good book. That just made me smile. It's like, nailed it. I mean, nailed it.
First thing I must admit, the first thing I thought is, why did you not buy him one? But, that is exactly right, because, who really cares about that? See, when you think about it, it's like, right, he gives a copy of his book to his dad. Now, that's fine. It's not like my book or the focal point in the Brennan family household, you know what I mean? But he actually takes the time to come back for no gain whatsoever, a pure fucking altruistic moment, to say he really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And for Paddy to take that 2 minutes to send that tweet made me feel 10 feet tall.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that means far more to me than any, set up critic saying, your book was great, can you send me 3 copies and all this crap. That's the people like Paddy Brennan are the people that I'm writing for, and his father. And I tell you, that stuff like that really means the world to me. It really does. And at the last book launch, you're kind of worried because it's a novel, it's something you've not done before, how will people react, etc. And they reacted in the way that I was so happy about, that I've never had with any other books, which was people came up to me and asked me about things in the book.
Yeah.
What does this mean? And I like this bit, and what was that bit about, and all that kind of thing. And as a writer, when you're doing that, on your own, in front of a computer, in the deep dark winters and stuff, that's the bits that you love most, because you go, I'll write this, and I hope that people take that for it, and all that kind of thing. And when they do, it inspires you to kind of do it again.
Absolutely. Fantastic stuff, Paul. Thank you so much again for joining us today. All the best with the future projects, the current projects, and before we wrap it up, prediction. It's prediction time. I put you on the spot. I'm going to do it again. Scoreline next week. What do you think? Who's going to be the standout player? I have my ideas based on the past couple of weeks. What are your thoughts?
Well, in an ideal world, I'd like to go back to the late 60s, early 70s, the Celtic Hibs finals, where it was, the Wimbledon finals of 6-1, 6-2, 6-3.
Yes.
But I think we'll win 3-1. I think Gary Hooper will score 2 goals. I think Chris Collins will score the other one. And I think we'll go 2-0 up. Hibs will score, and then we'll get the third one, and it'll be party on.
I'm going to say 2-0. I think we're going to keep a clean sheet on the heels of another clean sheet. Ambrose and Wilson together again. And 2-0. I'm thinking Gary Hooper's going to score a goal, his last game playing for Celtic. And the other one is going to come from an unlikely source. I'm going to say Ambrose scores from a header.
For the first goal?
For the second goal.
The second goal,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that'll put it away. Obviously I'm got the game and stuff like that. What's your cup final plans? I'm so glad you asked. The Revs chair, which is vacant today, he's at the Red Bull New York game, probably with his shirt off, and a bullhorn with smoke bombs that are overseen by the Newark police.
There's a guy, I must tell you a quick one actually. See the guy that goes to the Red Bull games that wears the bullhorns, the big guy, paints himself red as a
yeah.
Right? I went to a Red Bull game at Giant Stadium about 6 years ago, something like that. And I can't remember. I honestly can't even remember who I was with. I was definitely with somebody. And I'm sitting there, 12,000 people there in Giant Stadium, which it's not the best, obviously with its capacity and stuff.
Yeah.
And this guy is up giving it Yahoo and all that kind of thing, screaming, shouting, ranting, raving, and all that kind of thing. And I was kind of like sitting there saying to whoever the hell I was with, saying, look at that dick, you know what I mean? What an idiot, sit down, you clown, and all that kind of thing. So I had the hoops on that day, and as I go up to go for a beer at half time, I just heard somebody shouting, Celtic! And I was like, what the fuck? And it was the boy with the horns. And he's shouting up at me, Celtic! And he's putting his thumbs up. So, never does a book by its colour.
What's this mentalist on about?
Did you know Expose Rev actually sits in the corporate seats at the Red Bull Arena now? And He's kind of like one of the establishment there now, is he not?
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to do that apparently, but yeah, he's Rev is now the Comfy Seat Brigade with Red Bull. No, I'm kidding. He's one of the capo regimes, so I guess he coordinates all of the he coordinates the choir. But
you make him sound like a captain in another PE family in the 70s.
Yeah, exactly. He's got the he pays the tribute to the guy with the horns, who pays it up to the guy that paints himself red. It's all very. There's a hierarchy.
All right, you mean that guy at the other place?
Yes, yeah, that guy. But I broke the code of omerta, so I gotta have a sit down in Harrison, New Jersey. So fantastic. Now I'm going next weekend. At least the plan is to go to Philadelphia and meet up with Seamus and the Rev and Yampy on Twitter. The guy stands about 8 feet tall, but brilliant guy. And then a couple other folks, maybe Sean and Kyle from the Philly suburbs, may have a reunion of last year's Real Madrid game. Get as many of the folks that were there and that we met up with as possible for the Cup final. And we do have good karma with Cup finals in Philly. Remember it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Key scored a cracking goal as well as Charlie McGrew in that 4-0 game against Motherwell there, and that was actually the day that we decided we were going to do this. We lost our minds, and we decided we were going to put something like this together. So we're going to get back together. That's the plan anyway at this point. And so it should be good fun, and hoping to come up with a show after the game as well. And then I have some interviews that I'm trying to line up for the summer months like I did last year, and just keep it going throughout the summer because I don't know, it one of the other reasons why I wanted to start this was it's depressing. After the season's over, it's like, oh fuck, okay, there's the U.S. team, but it's just like, oh, it's just not the same.
No,
it's not the same.
International football will never be the same.
No, it's just something to do to pass the time. That's pretty much
it. The conundrum I had with the Cup final was, first of all, you've got 20,000 Hibs fans travelling from Edinburgh to Glasgow on the day.
Ugh.
So didn't want to be caught up in that. So going through the night before, and then the factor was, right, so what do we do after the game? Talking to my mate, and it's kind of like, well, if Hibs win, it's going to be like VE Day in Edinburgh. So forget that. But to get beat, you didn't really want to be going about celebrating, and you've just been beaten.
Yeah.
The team that in the bars are celebrating. So we're sort of going to the Gallagate that night, basically. To win, lose or draw, basically. But I'm really looking forward to it, I think, because it's, if we'd been playing Falkirk in the final, it's an A-win. They'd bring about 6,000 fans. We'd be expected to win. If we didn't, we'd never hear the end of it.
Right.
This final was an actual event. It's a 50-50 split with the tickets. People won't agree with that. But what it'll add to the occasion, there's no doubt about it. And I hope that like the 2001 final against Hibs, we won 3-0. The first song that was reverberating round the ground that day was "No Huns at Hampden." So hopefully that will happen again. And but no, I'm really looking forward to it. And it should be a great occasion, and hopefully we annihilate them, obviously.
Yeah, no question about it. I'd be delighted if it was a 7-1 snooze fest. Nothing could make me happier. And then go on the lash straight away after that. There's nothing better than a day like that where you win, yeah. But oh my god, I mean, I've been in Philly when we've lost too, and there's a lot of tall buildings. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, if you've got a guy who's 8 foot tall out drinking you, you can do what you like, basically.
That's true. That's true.
And hopefully you might bump into Darren Dalton. You never know.
Well, yeah, I guess that doesn't have good karma either, so maybe I want to avoid him.
Oh Christ, aye. But to be fair, that was before the game, so.
That's true. That's true. If we, maybe we can. It's like Superman flying around the planet, going backwards. Maybe if we see him after the game, it'll reverse. Whatever sort of cosmic efforts are at play. Look, I'm sure that he'd be good to remind me that I'm an asshole.
Yeah, it's always good to remind you of that every couple of years, and just someday bring you a reality check.
Especially by, a fat, overtanned former baseball legend.
Yeah, when it's somebody like Dutch Dalton, let's face it, you could call you a lot worse than being an asshole, you'd still love him, So,
That's true. And
and is it Fido you're going to watch it?
I believe so. So a lot of details are still yet to be worked out, but
I'm going to assume here that the post-match details will involve visiting pubs that Sheamus can sing in.
It's not even a question of finding the pubs where Sheamus can sing. Sheamus will sing until he's asked to leave.
I've never ever been out with anybody who determines pubs on how they approach his singing or not. You know, just like it's brilliant, but it's just like, you know, it's never been my main aims in going to a pub, like how they react to your singing.
No, I'm with you, but my singing sounds like a timing belt, and if I could sing like him, I probably would at every, you know, possible opportunity. So,
well, there's a thing for you, right? You're talking about turning round stuff into a rightful conclusion. Here's my challenge to you, right? If we win on Sunday, I challenge you on air to sing a folk song and right the wrongs of your Shane McGowan impersonation of 2 years ago.
That wasn't even an impersonation. I took it seriously. That was my problem.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So that's my challenge to you. On air, if we win that cup, you sing any folk song you like on the show next week.
This will not end well.
See, that's reverse psychology. So it's like, you know, tough to win. I know. The consequence of winning is you singing.
Well, plus I'll be completely pissed, so...
But the thing about it is, see, you're not thinking of this through. You've got a backing band right there.
Because, that's true.
Let's face it, Sheamus would sing at the drop of a hat.
Sheamus is my walking, talking auto-tune.
Yeah. So you could have that all worked out. And, you know, I mean, Rev, he's going to be too stoned to sing.
That's true. Or I'll be in the bathroom.
And more importantly, is Dos going to be there?
She's going to have to be. I mean, who's going to look after him? You know, I can't be watching him the whole time.
That's true. That's true.
Dos must be there.
But no, it should be. I mean, I tell you what, there'd be few places on the planet I would rather be than in Philly if we win that cup, because there's a whole fantastic thing.
I know it does get a bit out of hand, but it's fantastic fun, and I wouldn't miss it. So, really looking forward to it, and you know, I hope you have a great day out as well. I'm delighted that, you know, you got sorted for a ticket, and you know, I mean, if anybody deserves to be there, it's yourself. So,
well, I mean, look, you know, I was in America for 6 years, so it's like there was guys at every single game when I was there. So, you know, obviously they deserve the report. But I do have celebrity contacts, and that's why I got them. So,
that's true. That's true. The adoring women of the east of Scotland will see to it that you get what you want.
Well, as Mick Jagger says, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you get what you need.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, and Christ, that reminds me, Mick Jagger. The Stones in the Park. Does that mean anything to you?
Stones in the Park. They do a concert in Central Park?
No, they done a concert in Hyde Park after Brian Jones died as a tribute. Okay?
Yeah.
There is a documentary flying around now about the Stones in the Park, and it's, you know, filmed footage on the day. No modern day stuff all the time. So I'm watching it late last night. I'd been out to see John Cooper Clarke, one of my heroes. Phenomenal show. Anybody ever gets a chance to see John Cooper Clarke, the punk poet, Jesus Christ, what a scream the guy is. And he, you know, 60-year-old, and he looks like Alice Cooper, and he's just absolute genius. The Barbie Salford. Anyway, so I come back in, and I'm pretty sober. I wasn't drunk or anything like that. Stones in the Park was on Sky Arts channel. I turned it on. Within 5 minutes, there's a guy in Hyde Park watching the show wearing a Celtic top. 1969. I was like, oh my fucking God, I can't believe this.
Classic. So
if anybody sees that on Sky Arts or listening, check out the first 5 minutes. You'll see a guy wearing the hoops, and it's the old woolly hoops, you know.
All right.
And the players used to wear. So I'm going
on the interwebs. I'm going to search for this.
Oh, it's brilliant because, you know, you remind as well. You know, like a guy says to me, always says to me that Mick Jagger made a fortune out of pretending to be working class.
That's
You see how posh a boy he really is in this. Jim Morrison was the American equivalent, by the way, I'll have to say.
Yeah. Fantastic stuff. I want to give a shout out to John. I guess he's the chairman. He's the general secretary of the Myrtle Beach Ball Deep Celtic Supporters Club. The best. I think it's the best name for a Celtic Supporters Club on the planet. Ball Deep. Originally from Myrtle Beach, but he's listening to us from Park City, Utah, tweeting some lovely pictures. So,
Utah.
Yeah.
Ago.
He travels for business or something all over the world. I don't know. He's speaking of posh cunts. So How held did John?
That was on his passport. Like.
Yeah. It's stamps it with that. Also, Green Brigade, plug for them. They're having an anti-discrimination tournament at the Barrowfield Training Ground on Saturday, 29th of June. So check them out. 111 Celtic. It's unverified. Yeah, so that's it. I will be practicing my singing this week all through the shower, and I'll have to get pitched.
Well, it beats what you normally do in the shower anyway. So.
Fantastic stuff. So,
I love the way you just deflected that. I mean, do you understand that when you send out your tweets when your wife's away, that people can actually read them?
I don't care. I have no shame.
No, but now you see you've no shame, and then you completely deflect that question right there and then. And I must admit, I've spoke to 5 people in the last week who are absolutely delighted with your Crohn's updates.
Well, what else am I going to do when I have my flare-ups?
There's no sarcasm in that whatsoever. I'm telling you, that's what they actually said, that they were actually delighted to have your Crohn's updates.
Yes. Well, I know that people are on the edge of their seat waiting to hear about it because I get so much feedback about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you've done is you've conditioned your kind of fan base to think of you every time they go to the bathroom.
Well, look, if I'm going to be remembered for anything, it's better to be remembered than, be forgotten for nothing.
No, you will be remembered for confronting Peter Lawwell.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah,
the photo that launched 1,000 conspiracy theories.
The photo that just won't die.
Yeah, that's up in Lego's living room.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. He's like, the Mad Yank and Lawwell in it together, but how?
This is the proof.
Yeah, I come on the show and slag Lawwell, but we're really in it together.
That was a smoking gun. Yeah. Oh no, there's no doubt about that. Like, I mean, you've done well to act that out for a few years, but we all know that Peter Lawwell answers to you and you alone. That
reminds me. I got to call him after we're done. Thanks for reminding me.
You know what you should mention, if you could, the outfit that he was wearing at the Celts for Change thing yesterday.
What was wrong with it?
What? He looked like the Pied Piper of Hamlin. He was wearing grey trousers and a blue blazer.
What? Did he have brown brogues on?
Oh, I don't know. I never looked at it. I can never normally get past Peter's face, but no, I don't think he was. But it was a bit bizarre.
I'll have a word.
Yeah, to speak to him. Dignity is what this club's all about.
That's right. We have an image. We're a worldwide brand. I'll have a word.
And I'll be listening back on Monday to your show. Because I'm telling you right now, there's no chance of me listening to it on a Sunday.
I hope there isn't.
But it will be, my heart will be beating like a train if I hear you singing.
All right, well, I have to figure out what song I'm going to sing, but yeah, that should be...
I even gave you the choice of song. I'm not saying it has to be like Fiesta.
Well, thank fuck for that. I mean, the last one you gave me was like the hardest one ever, and you weren't clear about how you wanted me to do a Shane McGowan impersonation, which, granted, probably would have been worse.
Yeah, but what we didn't want was a Leonard Cohen impersonation, which what you actually did.
Yeah, you're right about that.
But look, you turned that into a positive, because let's face it, you came to the Bronx and you survived. That's
true. I mean, it is a deterrent. I mean, if people mess with me, the threat of my singing is enough to repel them.
That just reminded me about that. Who was it? An admiral or something you seen on the train coming up?
It was a commander in the Air Force, I think. Yeah. He had really bad breath and he was such a dick. You wrote about that in, which one was it? Yeah. It was the one where Coach drove the tank in the Bronx.
Oh, yeah. That was in Channel and Charlie Mulgrew.
Channel and Charlie Mulgrew, that's right, yeah. No, it was a commander in the Air Force. He was just such a dick. Like, I wanted to get up to go to the bathroom once, and he just, like, he's going to court-martial me. It's like, fuck off. I'm scared of flying, all right? I don't like heights. Get the hell away from me, Air Force.
But you should have pulled rank on him as well as being Peter Lawwell.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Fact that you're in the CIA.
That's right. Well, we don't like to talk about that.
Okay.
Omerta. Okay. Big G from Celtic Dream. Shout out to him. He's letting me know that I need to sing the Celtic song with the Kermit the Frog voice. I only do that on the Celtic Dream show, so I have to maintain exclusivity. I will do this. And Paul's challenged me. He's
Kermit the Frog. Did you know there's going to be a bad Kermit the Frog in the next Muppet movie?
I think that we've officially ran out of ideas. If that's
I'm just throwing it out there.
If that's the case,
no.
A bad Kermit the Frog.
Yep, he's going to be a bad one, and his boss is going to be Ricky Gervais.
Jesus Christ! There's not enough drugs.
That's a Raven Dose movie right there.
There's not enough drugs in the world to make that watchable.
Watch that. You have the best time of their lives.
Right, so we're going to come up with a derivative scenario where we're going to steal people's money and they'll never know about it. Yay!
Jesus Christ, how does he summon Kermit so quickly there? He just walked into the studio.
It's not easy being green. Right.
The fact that you've got your hand constantly up a frog is what worries me.
Listen, I'm about to send out instead of Crohn's tweets, I'm going to send out bladder explosion tweets.
Yeah, I'm on the verge of that myself, actually, so I'll let you go.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to listen back to this. I could talk to you all day, but at some point I have to have a slash. So thank you so much to everybody for listening and taking us out as always. Shane McGowan and the Pogues. You heard it right here. It's either going to be 3-1 or 2-0, but Celtic victory. I can feel it. Paul concurs, and we'll go from there. So
I'm there in the sun. We'll do it again.
That's it. For Paul Larkin, I'm Graham Wilson. Hail, hail, and keep the faith. We'll talk to you soon.
The island, it is silent now, but the ghosts still haunt the waves. And a torch lights up a famished man who fortune could not save. Did you work upon the railroads? Did you ride the streets of crime? Were your dollars from the White House? Were they from the 5 and dime? Did the old songs start to cheer you? And did they still make you cry? Did you count the months and years? Or did your teardrops quickly dry? I know 15 was not to be on a coffin ship. I came here and I never even got so far that they could change my name. Thousands are sailing across the western ocean to a land of opportunity that some of them will never see. Fortune prevailing across the western ocean, their bellies full, their spirits free. They'll break the chains of poverty and they'll dance. In Manhattan's desert twilight, in the dead of afternoon, we stepped hand in hand on Broadway, like the first men on the moon. And a blackbird broke the silence as you whistled, it's so sweet. And in Brendan Behan's footsteps, I danced up and down the street. And we said goodnight to Broadway, giving it our best regards. Took our hats to Mr. Cohen, dear old Times Square's favorite bird. Then we raised a glass to JFK and a dozen more besides. When I got back to my empty room, I suppose I must have cried. Thousands are sailing again across the ocean tickets and a lottery. Postcards were mailing with skyward skies and oceans, from rooms that daylight never sees, and lights don't glow on Christmas trees. And we danced to the music and we danced. Thousands are sailing across the Western Ocean, where the hand of opportunity draws tickets and